Hey everybody, today Rahdo talks through episode 53 of the podcast, which is going to be my yearly Essen Spiel blowout, which means no top 10 revisits, no questions and answers, no follow-up to last month's very controversial Q&A section. Let me once again extend my apologies to John and Mike, I think it was. Again, everybody, thank you so much for the well wishes. John and Mike, if that was their names, they were not attacking me. I just got a little triggered and overworked up. Everything's cool. Everything's fine. Let's talk about some games, shall we? Right. Well, what are we going to do today? First of all, I'm going to give you my top 10 most anticipated games for Essen Spiel. And after that, we will move on to a countdown of, I forget, it's like 130 or so other games, and then another 20 or so expansions. So, top 10. The rest of the games for purchase, and then finally expansions for purchase. And let's not waste any more time. I'll get right to that top 10 right after this. Hey everybody. Welcome back, and it is time to start counting. Let's hit the top 10 first. Although, before I get to them, I have to do a shout out to Heavy Cardboard, which is another board game podcast / YouTube channel run by Edward Euler. This year, I actually sat down with Edward for over 5 hours in his most recent podcast episode to talk about Essen Spiel and all of our exciting games. In fact, we did a top 20 countdown and top 10 expansions and a top 10 games to demo countdown. Plus, we talked a bunch about games in general and our background in the hobby and all sorts of things. Now, if you want to check that out, you can go hit the links in the show notes. It's so long, it's a two-parter, and I will be going into a lot of depth on the 40 games and expansions I'm going to talk about in that format. Today, I'm going to be trying to go quick, because I got 150 some games to get through. So, if you want deeper dives into some of these, well, again, follow those links and check out the Edward's Heavy Cardboard podcast. We both had a fantastic time. And with that out of the way, let's get going with my number 10. Paris, New Eden. Now, I've already done a run through of this, so you can go check out my video for that if you want. In a nutshell, this is a very cool card drafting game set in the far-flung future where humanity has kind of devolved back to the Stone Age or the Bronze Age, I suppose, and we are drafting dice every round to recruit survivors into our settlements and build up more and more buildings with special powers, and the survivors have special powers and all that. The thing that makes the game cool, besides the wonderful, gorgeous, green, verdant art, because the world has been reclaimed by nature, besides just how lovely it is, it's a lot of fun to play because every round, when you roll up the pool of dice that we're going to be drafting from, those dice get spread around to a bunch of different action spots around the board. And so if there's a die I want, because I really want to recruit that medic over there because I need that for my plans, but unfortunately the medic is over at the food hall. And what that means is, I'll get the medic I want, but I'll also trigger that particular action space, and maybe that's an action I want to do, like collecting more supplies, or maybe it's an action I don't want to do. So there's this constant tension about, well, do I get a die out of the action, the workspace I want to go to, or do I go for the die I want, even if it's in the wrong place? And of course, success will come from trying to navigate those tricky waters and finding good opportunities to get maybe not the best die, but the best die I can out of the best action I want. It's really clever, very fun, very fast. The only reason it didn't crack the top 5, because I really enjoyed this gameplay, is the developers seem to go out of their way to keep theme at arm's length. It's like they don't want us to feel the theme. So, the events that happen every round, they aren't given names, and just a bunch of dumb little things like that keep it out of the top 5, but the gameplay and the art is absolutely stellar. My number 10, Paris, New Eden. Then we got my number 9, Cooper Island. And now, this looks like a very, very cool, on the heavy side Euro, where players are basically trying to explore their own little archipelago, or I should say their own little peninsula on an island. It's not an archipelago. Everybody has a peninsula that is waiting to be explored, and every round, I am going to be putting these hex tiles that are double hex tiles, like domino hexes basically, onto my peninsula, which is going to increase the amount of resources I have access to convert into actions and points and all the rest of that stuff. The interesting thing is, as I am laying these tiles out and exploring my peninsula over the course of the game, not only am I putting tiles next to each other, domino style, I'm stacking them on top of each other as well. And that means I can make higher and higher and higher forest spaces or mountain spaces or whatever, which increases the amount of goods I get from those particular spots. So there's this very cool, it seems like 3D puzzle aspect to the game that I'm really keen on checking out. And then the other thing is, if you build up high enough, that becomes a point scoring area, and you lose the opportunity to harvest resources out of that anymore. So, again, what I always love to see in games is tough, tense decisions where I have to make tons of compromises and trade-offs, and it seems like this game is going to deliver that in spades. It's got a lot of other stuff going for it as well. Seems like it has a really nice presentation. I love the fact that the game itself is named not after some famous explorer, but after the designer's dog, Cooper. It looks really, really great, and I'm very keen on trying it out, especially after having seen Edward's playthrough of it on his Heavy Cardboard YouTube channel. You can go check that out if you want, but that is, at this point, my number 9, Cooper Island. And then we go on to number 8, Steamopolis. Now, I don't really know much about this game. The publisher has given very, very little information. And in fact, let me just read you the description that's on Board Game Geek. I mean, there's just hardly anything there. Well, okay, there's some setting. It's a steampunk city. But anyway, it's a huge steampunk city built like a giant skyscraper of gears and pipes. Different levels provide services and resources. To reach them, players use their steam-driven zeppelins. They plot their course, heat up their boilers, and take action. It's a engine building game for 1 to 4 players with a fair amount of non-destructive interaction. Optimize your engine, utilize it to the max to prove your worth as the future mayor. That tells me almost nothing. But if you're a fan of my show, you might have caught one very important element in there. Non-destructive interaction. I'm always looking for games that come up with cool ways for players to create opportunities for each other. I don't know how it works because there's nothing in the description. But that is what gets me halfway there to making this rank so high. It's in my top 10. The other thing, it is from designer Gerhard Hecht. And Gerhard Hecht was the designer of Kashgar Merchants of the Silk Road, which is one of the best engine building games in board game history. Kashgar is so amazing. One of Jen's and my favorite games of all time. Sits in my top 50 very comfortably. And so, while he's done a couple of other smaller games since then, this is going to be his first big box, medium weight, sprawling Euro since Kashgar. And I cannot wait to find out what it's all about. I wish there was more information. But you know what? You had me at Gerhard Hecht, publisher Corax Games. So that is my number 8, Steamopolis. Then we move on to number 7, Coloma. Now, this is another game I actually covered way back in February, I think, when it was on Kickstarter. So you can go see my run-through to see just how much Jen and I loved this game. It is set in the Old West, and it's kind of like the Old West meets Race for the Galaxy. Because we are trying to build up a series of buildings instead of, Space Empire components over the course of the game. But like Race for the Galaxy, we are very, very much paying attention to what our opponent's doing. In Race for the Galaxy, every round I try to guess what my opponent's going to do so I can piggyback off of what they're doing and get a little bit of extra action myself. Here in Coloma, it's the opposite. I try to figure out what my opponent's going to do to make sure that I do something completely different, because the more you overlap with what everybody's doing on a given turn, the less powerful the action becomes. So ideally, I want to be the only one doing an action and everybody else happens to do some other thing. They end up getting weak versions of the actions. I get a strong version of my action, and It's awesome. A very, very cool system, works really nicely, and it works really well as a two-player game too. The game has an awesome system called the Buster system that is just absolutely fantastic. There's a lot going on, and my complaints that I had when I covered it back on Kickstarter have been addressed. There's a lot more bridges than my prototype had. You now do scoring at the end of the game instead of during the game, so you can focus more on gameplay and less on bookkeeping. I was blown away by this from the get-go. It's gorgeous, and in fact, I should say, one of the reasons it ranks so high is I just got a copy of it in the mail, a final version, and it's the deluxe version, and it looks gorgeous. The art from the Miko is stellar, and I cannot wait to get it to the table again because we love the prototype so much. Anyway, that is my number 7, Coloma. Then we go on to my number 6, another game I've covered, so you can go check out my run-through for Aquatica. This is a very sharp game of players trying to expand their dominion under the sea. We're a bunch of amphibious fish man hybrid creatures. Think Abyss, the Bruno Cathala game. And the gorgeous art really captures the feeling of being 20,000 leagues under the sea. But what makes this game special, what Jen and I were so impressed by, is the fact that there are a bunch of different types of cards we're trying to draft. New, important people that have special abilities, and more importantly, new locations that we can conquer for our own empire. And when you take one of these empire cards, you put it onto your own board, but each board has a slot that the cards slide into. And the more you harvest resources from those cards, the more the cards literally, physically get gobbled up by your board until they pretty much disappear inside them, and then that's when you get to score the cards. This is a wonderful little tactile thing that really brings the game to life in a really unique way and leads to a whole bunch of wonderful string combo chains type gameplay. And Jen and I were really enamored with this game. I've only played the prototype. It was a little rough and ready, but I expect the final version will be a very, very high quality production, especially because this is from Cosmodrome, who last year brought us Smartphone Inc., which was kind of just a critical darling that came out of nowhere and everybody loved to pieces, and it had such a wonderful production. So I expect Aquatica will reach or maybe even exceed that pedigree because I played it and it's awesome. My number 6, Aquatica. But again, check out my run-through. Go check out my run-through to learn more. Number 5, another game I played when it was on Kickstarter earlier this year, so you can go check out the run-through for It's a Wonderful World. And this is a great card drafting game. Unlike Aquatica, which is all the cards are laid out and we're grabbing them one at a time, this is more of a Seven Wonder style thing where I've got a handful of cards, I'm picking some and handing the rest to my neighbor, they're handing to me. The Sushi Go approach. But there are a lot of things that make this game very, very special as we build our near future, 2050 empires, in a near future world where we're making all kinds of scientific breakthroughs and exploration breakthroughs and expanding our military and all the kind of stuff you would expect. Think Seven Wonders, but set in the year 2100 instead of the era of antiquities. What makes this game special, though, there's two things. When I draft a card and I take it, we don't all just play our cards simultaneously immediately. Instead, we put them into a queue of cards we'll play later, and then we hand the rest off. And that means over the course of a round, I can see more and more of your cards building up, so I can get an idea of what you're going to try and do, and you've got the same idea for me. And so, it makes the hate drafting a much more interesting and compelling component, because I can see, oh, wow, you're going for that? I can't let you have this then because that'd be perfect for you. But I can never be 100% certain what you're doing because these cards are all multi-use, which means I can either add them to my overall Empire's engine of cards that generate resources for me, to be able to build other cards, or I can just trash these cards to get immediate resources I need to build those cards that are going into my engine. And the beautiful thing, the coolest thing about this game is when you do successfully build, I've claimed a card, it took me several rounds to get all the resources to build it, now it goes into my engine. In most games, you would then have to wait till the next round before it would actually produce. In this game, they produce immediately. So, like Aquatica before, this is a game where if you play smartly, you can set up really awesome, empowering combo chains of, okay, I'll trash this card to get these last resources, which means I can build this one and this one. They both go in, they both generate. That lets me finish the thing I've been working on for the whole game, and boom, that gets me 10 points, and it's awesome feeling. And I cannot stress enough just how fantastic this game is. It was my first ever game of the month when I started doing my monthly roundups. It is my number 5. It's a Wonderful World. Then we move on to number 4, Foothills. And I have actually played this. I just played this a couple of days ago, and I'm hoping to get it covered before the show. I want to get it on film because this is a brilliant game from designer Tony Boydell, and he co-designed it. I want to say, I'm going to look it up because I don't want to get it wrong. Let's see. Foothills. Co-designed with Ben Bateson. Ben and Tony have knocked it out of the park. You could think of this, if you wanted to, as Snowdonia, the card game, but that would be very unfair because this game is as big and deep and rich as Snowdonia, which is one of the greatest worker placement games of all time ever was. If you don't believe me, go watch my run-throughs for that. I mean, I've covered pretty much every facet of Snowdonia over the years because I'm just over the moon with it. Foothills takes the core idea of Snowdonia, where players are kind of working together because we are trying to lay down famous real-world historical rail lines. And to do that, first we have to clear away the rubble, then we have to lay the track, then we have to build the stations, and every step of the way we're getting access to special powers and collecting resources that we convert into other resources, a bunch of Euro-y type stuff. But the hallmark of Snowdonia has always been, I'll end up doing that first step, but you'll end up doing the second step, and who will do the third step? This kind of, even though it's a competitive game, we're all trying to compete, we're always creating opportunities for each other. Foothills takes it to the next level because instead of just working on one master rail line, which is what Snowdonia always has been, now we're working on 5 that are working in parallel. So it almost has kind of a Russian railroads feel to it, and it's awesome. And if all that weren't enough, it has replaced the worker placement of Snowdonia with this very cool system where I've got 5 worker cards laid out in front of me. They're each 2-sided. And one has a strong action and one has a weak action. And when I use the strong action to clear a bunch of rubble, I have to flip that card over to the weak action. And suddenly that card changes. Now it's a weak version of building stations instead of a strong version of clearing rubble. But I already have a strong card for building stations. So if I use that card, now I've created another weak card. And you're constantly having to juggle because I don't want to do the weak action, but I want to do the weak action because then I can flip it back over to my strong action. And if that weren't enough, I can actually upgrade these cards by bringing new ones in and jettisoning the old ones to score them. Oh my gosh, there is so much going on in this game. Blown away by it. Spoiler alert. Should I tell you? Yeah, I haven't filmed my roundup yet. This is my game of the month for the month of October. Foothills is phenomenal, and it will be available at Essen Spiel. I'm absolutely blown away by it. It supplants Snowdonia for me, and that's saying something because I've always loved it. Anyway, that was my number 4, Foothills. Now, let's move on to number 3, Tapestry. Okay, I should have started by explaining, as I did on my heavy cardboard guest appearance on the podcast. One thing I didn't want to do with this top 10, or the top 20 I did on Edward's show, is repeat myself from my Gen Con preview just a few months ago. So, any games that made it onto my Gen Con top 10 and my Gen Con podcast, I decided to leave out of my top 10 here, which means certain games like On Tour and Black Angel, and there were a few other contenders that might have made this top 10. I already gave them top 10 status a few months ago, and now it's just, they were available in Indianapolis, now they're available in Essen, so I didn't want to repeat myself. So, that's why some games, like Black Angel, which is on track to be my number 1 game of the year, quite frankly, isn't on my top 10. I'll talk about it when I'm getting to the rest of stuff, but I really wanted to highlight new things here. And Tapestry is still a pretty new thing. There are a lot of people out there who have not been able to get their hands on it. And amazingly, I went back and checked. I didn't talk about Tapestry back in my Gen Con preview because it hadn't been announced yet. So let me declare, here loud and far, that Tapestry is amazing. It is a lightweight, kind of light to medium weight civilization building game where we go from the era of from pre-era of antiquities to the far-flung future as we start out, just trying to make fire, and at the end of the game, we are colonizing the galaxy like any good civilization game. But this one has got to be one of my favorite Civ games of all time because it really downplays players trying to smash each other into the dirt and plays up the notion of Euro-style engine building, goods conversion, combo chain wonderfulness, and it is awesome. Doesn't quite make my game. I mean, Black Angel is still going to probably be my game of the year. Although, again, I mean, some of the games that are coming out at Essen might supplant both these games. I don't know. But for now, if you want to know more about Tapestry, you can go watch my original run-through if you like. But I'm just going to leave it there. My number 3, Tapestry. Now let's talk about number 2. That's going to be the Expedition to Newdale. This is from designer Alexander Pfister, who is fast becoming my second favorite game designer of all time. You know, he hasn't supplanted Steffenfeld yet, but he seems to be just destroying the competition every step of the way. Every new game he comes out with, I am blown away by. And even if they turn out to be games that don't work for me and Jen for various and sundry reasons, usually because maybe they have a little bit too much, quote, player interaction, it doesn't mean I'm not always blown away. By Great Western Trail and Blackout Hong Kong and Port Royal and the Witch's Game. But most importantly, one of the mini games he's released over the last few years was called Oh My Goods, a tiny, tight, fast little engine building card game. Expedition to Newdale is the sequel to Oh My Goods. And this is kind of odd. I talked earlier about, I mentioned Foothills, which some people might say is Snowdonia, the card game. It's not really. But that's not an unusual thing to see. Big, gigantic, heavy Euro game brought down into small box form and it becomes the card game. I'm going to talk about a few of those. Right. What was I just saying? Okay, yes. So, the interesting thing about Expedition to Newdale is it goes the other way. What started out as a tiny, tight, little engine-building card game with multi-use cards and a very clever system that Jen and I really enjoyed quite a bit is now blossoming and becoming a big, full board game experience. With a board, with the notion of conquering territory in some way that I don't really know how it works. I haven't looked into it too much because I don't care. Alexander Pfister, he has earned right of first refusal. I don't need to double-check his games. I know they're going to be great, but I'm really keen on seeing how this works. Taking a small little game that I already liked and building it up big time. Could be a recipe for disaster, but I doubt it. The other thing that makes me excited about Newdale is Alexander Pfister has been working over the years at slow baby steps into bringing narrative elements into Euro gaming. And this seems like his biggest one to date, where he's really blowing it out and having, a really strong story drive the overall evolution of this game, at least as I understand it. So those are the reasons Expedition to Newdale makes my number 2 spot. But there's something that eclipses it. What could it be? Mr. Alexander Pfister strikes again with Maracaibo. Or is it Maracaibo? Not quite sure. Should have looked it up. We'll just stick with Maracaibo. And, like Newdale before it, I don't know much about this game. I don't need to know much about this game. I don't care. The man, at this point, from my experience, can do no wrong, and I fully expect this is going to be an absolutely brilliant big box Euro that will stand toe-to-toe with Great Western Trail and Blackout Hong Kong and Mombasa and all of his other titles. I gotta give you something. Let me just go on ahead and read the description because there's not much there. Once again, publishers, Capstone Games, why are you giving us, what? It looks like 4 sentences. It's a new strategy game from Alexander Pfister set in the Caribbean in the 17th century. You try to increase your influence in 3 nations in 4 rounds with a playtime of 40 minutes per player. That's not what I need to know. You haven't told me anything. We sail around a course around the Caribbean if we have city tiles where we're able to perform various actions or deliver goods to. Okay, that's kind of vague. One special feature is an implemented quest mode over more and various tiles, which tells the player who chases it a little story. Okay, great. Narrative again. Okay, but still, you haven't told me anything about the gameplay. As a player, you move with your ship around the course, managing it by using cards like in other games from Alexander Pfister. That's the one thing, and that's it. That's the description. There's one useful bit of information in that whole bit. It's that last fraction of a sentence, like in other games by Alexander Pfister. I'm assuming because both Mombasa and Blackout Hong Kong had a very interesting card, I wouldn't call it deck building, kind of mini deck building game. They both kind of did it in different ways. It was really brilliant. It was like the cornerstone of both of those games that made them both wonderful. I'm assuming he's bringing that system back again. I don't know, because Capstone Games doesn't want us to know, but that's okay. Because it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. It's my number 1 most anticipated game. And considering Blackout Hong Kong was my number 1 game of last year, I mean, that just tells you how crazy I am for Mr. Fister. I expect big things from my number one most anticipated game for this Essen Spiel, Maracaibo. And that is it, folks. My top 10. And if you hang on, we will continue with the podcast now. And I'll talk about that under 130 to 140 games and expansions. Whew, it's going to be a long afternoon. Wish me luck. Okay, we'll be right back, everybody. Okay, everybody, now it's time for the heavy lifting. That top 10 was relatively painless, but 129 more games according to my filter on the, as always, excellent Board Game Geek Essen Spiel preview. And I forgot to mention this up front. I apologize, Eric. Huge shout out to W. Eric Martin, the head news guy of Board Game Geek, for collating all this data, putting it in one place, and to the fine folks at Board Game Geek for making it really easy to sort and search. And now, pre-order for the first time, for the first Essen Spiel ever. Very useful tool. Go check out the links in the show notes if you haven't ever seen it for yourself. I know there's only a few days left till the show, but it might help you out. But folks, enough of that. I got 129 names to get through, and the list ain't getting any shorter, so let's get going. I should say, while I have flagged each and every one of these games as interested instead of must-have, I only have 10 must-haves, the top 10, so I have 129 interested. I have not sorted them alphabetically or by publisher. I have sorted them by thumbs, which means I'm going to start with the game that has the least number of thumbs on the list, which means, well, the first one has 6. Only 6 people have deigned to thumb my first game on the list. The last game, game number 129, or I guess game number 1, if you can, would be, has 661 thumbs. So we're going to go from 6 thumbs to over 600. That's almost 3 sixes there, folks. So let's get going with my first game on the list with 6 thumbs is Deadly Doodles. And I have to admit, I've never really been that keen on games from Steve Jackson Games. They've got their place, they're just not Jensen my cup of tea, but this one looks really interesting. It is a roll and write, or a flip and write, because you draw cards instead of roll dice, I believe. But whatever, it's a roll and write. Let's just call them roll and writes. Can we just all agree to that? Anyway, here's what's interesting about this. It seems like it borrows a trick from Railroad Inc., in that every round, the randomizer, whether it's cards or dice, who cares, is going to tell me certain types of corridors I can draw in a dungeon. And instead of making a whole bunch of rail lines like in Railroad Inc., or roads like in Avenue for that matter, I am building a dungeon, trying to collect items to be able to fight monsters, to collect treasure. I love Avenue and I love Railroad Inc. Could Deadly Doodles supplant both of them? I have to admit, I like dungeon crawling more than island exploring or railroads, so I'm keen. But apparently, I'm one of 7 people. I'm going to give it a thumb right now, just to give it a little bit more love. The first game on the list with now 7 thumbs, Deadly Doodles. Then we go on to the next game, which also has 7 thumbs, Frankie Rock and Roll Vegas, which is another roll and write, I believe, and apparently we're rolling custom dice to try to put together body parts to create a Frankenstein's monster. But it's Viva Las Vegas, baby. He's, I don't know, rocking the stage or something like that. I don't really know. There's not much of a description here. We're just crazy scientists trying to make monsters in Vegas for some reason. Here's why I'm interested in it. It's from Andreas Schmidt, the designer, who last year or 2 years ago was the co-designer on Heaven and Ale, which I believe got the Kennerspiel. It's like one of the most highest regarded, highest ranked games of the year. So I'm interested to see what Andreas does now that he has broken away from Michael Kiesling, and I like roll and writes. And the cartoony art of the box cover looks nice. I couldn't tell you much more. Maybe that's why it hasn't gotten very many thumbs, but I'll be interested to know more about Frankie Rockin' Vegas. Okay. After that, at 12 thumbs, we have got Rescue Animals. And, oh man, this one I actually put in my games of interest a while ago, which means I probably already talked about it on the podcast at some point. So, suffice to say, there's not much, I don't know much about this. This is a dice rolling and set collection game where we are actually conservationists trying to save endangered species. I am super all over that theme. I know Jen will be as well. So that's half of the reason I'm interested, just because of the theme. The other reason I'm interested in this game, though, is because it is from designer Zemek Wojciechowski. I'm sorry. I don't know. It's a Polish name or a Czechoslovakian name. I don't know. It's very hard to pronounce. But anyway, this is the guy who a couple of years ago designed another fantastic game called Sanctuary, or The Sanctuary Endangered Species. So this guy, Polish, I looked him up, he's Polish. This Polish designer loves saving animals. And Jen and I were really impressed by The Sanctuary. It was an incredibly clever worker placement game. It had a lot of really smart stuff going on. So, based on the pedigree and based on the subject matter, I am all over rescue animals. So much so that I'm taking it from 12 thumbs to 13 thumbs. Okay, after that, 12 thumbs, I gotta push this up to 13 thumbs now, is Monster Baby Rescue. And this is interesting. It is from designer Vladimir Suchi, and this is basically his follow-up to last year's Monster Euro hit Underwater Cities. And this could not be further from it. Underwater Cities was a big, heavy, long, deep Euro, all about heavy worker placement, action selection, resource management stuff, building an undersea city to, sustain humanity. That was all very cool. Really cool game. Made my top 10. This year, he's making a sweet, adorable, charming little, a cute cartoony game for families. This is a light gateway game all about saving cute baby adorable dragons and various and sundry monsters. Looks kind of like maybe a light parallel to Dungeon Pets. I'm not saying it's anything like that, but here's the thing. Vladimir Suchi is one of my top 10 favorite designers of all time because of Underwater Cities and Shipyard and the game where you try to lose all your money really fast. And I can't think of it. My brain just fails me. But he's an amazing designer, and I am in love with the fact that he is breaking out on his own. This is the second game from publisher Delicious Games. Delicious Game is Vladimir and his wife and his family doing all this stuff. Not going to Kickstarter, just publishing directly. And so, he's always been an amazing designer. This might be too lightweight for us. I don't know, but I suspect it'll be a very, very sharp design, if nothing else. So, it's on my list. Monster Baby Rescue. Then we've got Solar Draft, also at 13 thumbs. And the interesting thing about this game to me is, well, it's a card drafting game from Tasty Minstrel Games. It looks like the whole game fits in just a deck of cards. So it's probably a very light, very portable, take it with you anywhere in your back pocket style game, and it is a card drafting game where we are trying to design the best solar system. So I don't know much about it. I'm confident just based on the fact that it's from Tasty Minstrel Games that it will be a sharp design. I believe Zach Moore is a first-time designer. Let me double check that. Yep, first time design from Zach. Tasty Minstrels picked it up, and it looks like all the cards you can draft, you're trying to lay them out in a linear order to make your ideal solar system, but you're jostling around, moving them left to right, because all these cards have different special powers and whatnot that I'm assuming get activated based on how they're put into the row. I'm not quite sure. I haven't felt the need to look at it very much because I have a high level of trust in Tasty Minstrel Games, quite frankly, so Solar Draft is interesting to me. Then we move on to 14 thumbs. Okay, Post-Human Saga. Jen and I played this back last year when we were on the road, moving from Malta to America. So I did not get as much time as I would necessarily like with this, but I was very impressed, as was Jen. This is a post-apocalypse, sprawling, explore the land, fight mutants, adventure-style game that is Euro instead of Ameritrash. Everything about this game would make you think, oh, this is basically Fallout, the board game, but the thing is, there's no dice. Or no, actually, that's not true. There are dice, but this is not a game that's full of just, bog standard roll to resolve. itself. It does very, very clever. It's just chock full of really interesting and unusual, novel and experimental gameplay systems, and it's very strongly narrative driven. And the nicest thing about it, maybe, is the fact that it has a real sense of humor. Not that I'm saying it's a comedy, but it has a kind of a dry wit to it in all the narrative and storytelling you explore. But yeah, it's got area control going on, tile laying, narrative, choose your own adventure, book stuff. It's got a lot of things going for it. And like I said, Jen and I were very impressed with the amount of time we got to play it when we were on the road. So it's finally available to everybody post-Human Saga. Then we move on to The City, also at 14 thumbs. This is designer Thomas Lehmann's prequel to Jump Drive. It is, or another way to look at it, it is the little brother of Race for the Galaxy, because it has a lot of the same basic feel of Race. We're trying to build a tableau of cards, spending cards to play other cards, the cards combo with each other in lots of interesting ways, but we're building a modern metropolis rather than some far-flung future space empire. And I covered this years ago because it's been out of print forever, and I was really impressed with it at the time, thought it was a fun, sharp little game. Its sequel, Jump Drive, made my top 10 of the year it came out, in fact. So, this new revamped second edition re-release of The City, I think, well, it stands to reason that it will be phenomenal, because Thomas Lehmann is a phenomenal designer. So, that's at 14 thumbs, The City. Then we move on to 15 thumbs. It is Tricky Druids. Now, I don't know much about this game, and I have to admit, in all honesty, mixing up potions is just not an interesting gameplay theme for me. But we're druids and we're trying to get alchemical components to make our potions to score points. Fine. Fair enough. I'm not loving it, but it's okay as a theme. What's interesting to me, the reason I put this on the list is the very brief description of the gameplay makes a big deal about how you get a sizable number of the ingredients you need for your potions from your opponent. It's a big part of the game that players get a big bunch of components. They keep some for themselves. They give some to other players around the table. And so that has me intrigued because that's an example of positive interaction in gaming, which is always something that I think should be rewarded. So Tricky Druids, definitely one worth looking for. It's from designer Carlo A. Rossi. Why does that name sound familiar? Let me look. What have you done, Carlo? What have you done? Okay. Nope. Not games that I have played. Alchemist from 2007, Hob and Good. He's done several games, but this will be his first one I played. I've already forgotten the name of it because I closed the window. Oh, there we go. Tricky Druids. Phew. All right. On to 15 thumbs. No, we're still stuck at 15 thumbs. Oh, in the doldrums with PAX, spelled P-A-X. This is another second edition of a card game, much like The City before it. I played PAX years ago and loved it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It's a game, interestingly enough, where at the beginning of the game, players are all members of of Spartacus's led slave revolt in ancient Rome. And we are all basically trying to, marshal our resources to take down Rome proper. And at the end of the game, whoever has done it the best will win because they'll become the new leader of the revolution. Here's the interesting thing about this game. If it's looking throughout the course of the game like, you know what, our revolution might fail because Rome is an active third player. If you're playing this 2-player, there's 3 players. Rome is playing as well and marshaling their own resources every round. And if it's looking like we might not win here, we might not beat Rome to see who could be the leader of the revolution, if somebody wants to, they can be very, very quick to abandon the revolution and join Rome. And then the game just completely changes. And it's fantastic. Every time Jen and I ever played, she always abandoned me and left me alone to fight Rome without fail. And sometimes she would win and sometimes I would still pull it out. But it's a very, very clever game. Been out of print for a long time. Getting a second edition now, PAX. From Bernd Eisenstein, who is a really, really great designer. Designer of Peloponnese, one of my favorite games of all time. So, yeah, check it out. 15 thumbs for PAX. 16 thumbs goes to T-Rex's Holiday. And this is another roll and write. What was it? Oh, okay. I'm looking. I remember what was interesting about this. Because, I mean, there's so many roll and writes. You gotta do something to stand out. Here's the deal. Every round, everybody has their own set of 3 dice they roll. They roll them behind their hands, pick 2 of the dice to make public, and those are the dice that they're going to write on their board. I don't know what we're writing. If we're, making another dinosaur theme park, or we're filling in blocks. It's immaterial. We write stuff based on the dice we've got. Everybody does that. The third die that stays hidden, after everybody has used their publicly declared dice, all the hidden dice get revealed, and everybody gets access to those dice. That's a really, really cool idea. I like it a lot. It's another great example of non-destructive player interaction, where players are creating opportunities for each other. So I can imagine, not having played it, not knowing much about it, that a big part of the game is, okay, well, I got to do these, but if I leave this one behind as the hidden, I'll be giving it to you, and I can see that's really good for you, so I should keep this one hidden. I think it could be very, very cool. I think it's a great idea. Definitely deserves more than 16 thumbs. T-Rex's Holiday. After that, 16 thumbs go to Pirates Under Fire. This is on my list because it is from designers Marco Canetta and Stefania Niccolini. I don't know if they're a husband and wife team. I know they work very, very closely. I've actually met them, but their English was very poor, and I didn't even occur to me to ask, hey, are you guys married? Because they have different last names. But anyway, they have been working together for years, and they have given us some excellent games. I am talking about, what am I talking about? Railroad Revolution. I'm talking about Zangguo. I'm talking about the Doge Ship. These two, they've been kind of under the radar. They have not really caught fire as much as they should, because those are some very excellent designs. And so anytime they're coming out with some new big box game, I am there. Now, they're not doing dry, dusty Euro fare. They're doing Pirates. Pirates Under Fire specifically. I don't know much about the gameplay. Again, this is a situation where I didn't feel like I needed to. Apparently, it's a tile laying game there's tiles on the board and we're putting our ships on the board. Each ship we deploy has a special action. Each space we can put the ship on out in the ocean has a special action. So I guess the strategy of the game is going to be matching ship powers with interesting island powers. That's a cool idea. I'm a little nervous because it is pirates, and maybe this is going to be a game where we are trying to mess each other over. That seems to be the case with most pirate games. I hope not. The description does talk about at the end, we score based on the way that we've laid our pirate ships out, putting them in groupings and stuff like that. So I think, one, the pedigree is phenomenal. Marco and Stefania are great, great designers. They deserve more attention. And so I would definitely be going to check out Pirates Under Fire if I were at the show, and probably picking it up. Then we move on to Deck-Tective, the Bloody Red Roses, with 16 thumbs also. Now, this is from the same publisher as Deckscape, which you folks probably know is my favorite escape room in your home series of games out there. Love them to pieces. Just last week played 2 more of them. I'll be covering them in this month's roundup, so I'll be talking about them pretty soon. But in the meantime, DV Giochi, or I don't know how to pronounce that in Italian, are branching out and doing other small the entire game fits in a little tiny box, but now, instead of them being escape room in your home, they are mysteries to solve. It's from the same creators, the same designers as the Deckscape series, and I've been super impressed by how Deckscape has continued to grow and evolve, and they've continued to come up with really cool designs. So I am definitely interested in seeing this kind of sister product, this kind of side launch. I have to admit, Jen and I, we were kind of getting to the point where we realized we're just not that into solving mysteries. Detective from Portal Games kind of convinced us of that last year. But considering how escape room in your homes, have we gotten burned out on them, but we still like the Deckscape, maybe Deck-Tective will convince us we do like solving mysteries after all. So we move on then to 19 thumbs with Embers of Memory, a Throne of Glass game. Now the interesting thing is, the Throne of Glass is a very popular series of fantasy novels. Hugely well loved, I guess. I haven't read them. But the interesting thing is, this game is retelling a chapter taken from the final book of the series, which is really weird, because that means if you get this game, you're going to get pretty big spoilers about the overall multi-narrative or multi-novel arc of the game by playing this game. Because it's not like they said it in the first book, they said it in the final book. So that's weird, which means it's almost kind of like they're only targeting fans of the books. Although they're such a huge popular series, I guess maybe that'll work out for them. It wasn't that reason that I mentioned. I haven't read the books. I don't know. I'm not too worried about the spoilers, but I just mentioned this because some people might. The reason I'm interested in it is because this is a reworking of the Ravens of Three Sahasri, which was a brilliant two-player only cooperative game where one player was a little girl in a coma with fractured dreams trying to stitch them back together, and the other player was a little boy who could dive into her dreams and try to help her stitch her memories back together so she could come out of the coma. Now, I don't believe this is a little boy and a little girl and comas and stuff like that. I think it has something to do with somebody locked in a prison cell or something like that. But the core gameplay of Three Sahasri, it's pretty much the exact same game, just rethemed into this fantasy series. And as I understand it, there's a lot of narrative. In fact, one of the things that's added is you can play through kind of a campaign where more and more and more of the features of Ravens of Three Sahasri get turned on the longer you play. Or you can just dive right into the end and play the whole game. If you don't know Ravens of Three Sahasri, I did a run through for it years ago. It was a real mind bender, let's say. I was going to say something else, but this is a family show, and we were very impressed by it. Although we were kind of turned off by the anime stylings, the art looks gorgeous, and who knows? Maybe this will inspire us to read the book. I don't know. But anyway, that is sitting with 19 thumbs, Embers of Memory. Then we go on to 22 thumbs with Beluga. Oh, it looks gorgeous. Simple, clean, aesthetic art style. This is a game where one player is a mother beluga whale using echolocation to try to find her babies, which are the other players. That's it. That is all I need to know. That sounds like such a wonderful theme. I suspect, because we're using echolocation, that this is going to be one of those imperfect communication games where players can't just come right out and say what cards are in their hand and what they're going to do, and you have to kind of intuit what's going on. Echolocation, that's a really, really cool concept for a board game, and this sounds like a wonderful, wonderful theme. Apparently, we're under a lot of pressure too because the little baby belugas can get eaten by polar bears if we're not quick enough. So, really cool idea. Beluga. So, that's definitely one to check out at 22 thumbs. Also, at 22 thumbs, we have Aristocracy. No, it's just aristocracy. It's aristocracy. There's nothing funky about it. Aristocracy. Yeah, I thought it was doing a funky spelling. Anyway, this is another game from Tasty Minstrel Games. This is the latest. This is the third game in their little tiny box fantasy Euro series. What was it before that? Harvest and... I can't think of the other game that was... there's been a few games in this series with really nice art, and I don't know that particularly matters here because this is from a new designer, and that's what's really interesting. This is the first time Tasty Minstrel Games, one of my favorite publishers in the industry, has worked with Reiner Knizia. And so, that sounds very, very cool to me. Reiner Knizia doing a fantasy kingdom building game published by Tasty Minstrel that's all basically just a big old deck of cards. Yeah, I'm there. Sign me up for Aristocracy. Aristocracy. Alrighty. Then, moving on to 24 thumbs, we have Assembly. Now, this is a game I covered last year at UK Games Expo, and it is a very sharp, cooperative, or solo game of players trying to escape from a doomed space station where the AI has gone rogue and is trying to kill us all. And because the AI has gone rogue and trying to kill us all, we cannot speak while playing. We have to puzzle out how to build an escape ship on the assembly line of this space station without directly talking because we can't let the AI know what we're doing. And so we have to try and intuit what each of us are going to do. This is another Hanabi-style inspired game, and Jen and I, we thought it was great. Interestingly, I think I will mention this later, Assembly is going to be there, and it's getting a couple of expansions as well. Neat, sharp game, great solo, great two-player. I guess it can go up to 4 players. I haven't tried that, but really like it a lot. Assembly. If you want to know why, go check out my run-through. Or my roundup. Or rundown. Whatever. I did it before. And so, let's move on to 25 thumbs, where we have Opal. Or Opale? It's not Opal. It's Opal with an E at the end. So I'm going to say Opale. And I bet you anything the publisher didn't tell you how to pronounce it, did they? No, they did not. It's a fast, addictive game for 2 players. You play your cards at the right moment to score points and change the destiny of the kingdom. Yeah, great. That tells me a lot. Doesn't matter. I don't need to know much about the gameplay. It's from designer Rudiger Dorn, who is one of the greatest board game designers of all time. Istanbul is what is most recently known for, but Goa is amazing. Runestones, a game I covered earlier this year, is great. Oh, hey, I looked a little bit further. This is a re-implementation of an earlier game of his called Dragonheart. I've never played Dragonheart. If you know Dragonheart and you've long longed for Dragonheart, it's back as Opale, with 2 new variants thrown in to add even more gameplay. Hooray! 25 thumbs for Opale. Or Opali? I don't know. Then we got 26 thumbs. And Tan Caravan. And I'll be honest, folks, I almost took this off the list. The only reason it's on the list, because I've read, the description actually for this one is very long, but it does a terrible job of articulating what the game feels like to play. It's very long, but very dry. It sounds very generic. It makes it actually sound not particularly interesting. But this is from publisher Blue Orange Games, and they do phenomenal production. It's from a group of 3 designers who I'm not familiar with. I don't know if I've seen any of their work. Let me just go on ahead and look up one of them. Alexei Konov. Right. Pandorium. Oh, you know what? Oh, Inuit, the Snowfolk. I have not played it, but I heard nothing but good things about that. I think I looked at it and thought about trying to cover it, but it had too much Take That in there. I think, maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway, so I'm not that familiar with their work. Game of Trains and Pandorium and Inuit, the Snowfolks. But the description sounds a lot. At least in terms of theme, a lot like Jaipur. And Jen and I have a real soft spot for Jaipur. It is a card drafting set collection style game. It looks like it has phenomenal art. That's the main thing I'm going on. So just barely made the list. I'm thinking maybe I should have, but I'll leave it on the list with 26 thumbs. Tan Caravan, even though I can't hardly tell you anything about it. I can tell you about the next game, though, also with 26 thumbs, Rolled West. From Tasty Minstrel Games. That's right, folks. And this time I've actually played it. I've actually done a video for it. This is a wonderful little roll. Actually, I covered it in a roundup a few months ago because I got a pre-release copy of it. It is a great roll and write that captures, it is basically Gold West, the dice game. And I say that in the best way possible. It gets rid of all the area control and whatnot and the Macau-style action queuing system, but it is a very sharp game. And one of the things I love most about it is the dice we're rolling so that we can write and collect resources and build towns and get special powers and all the stuff you do in a roll and write. They're actually 12-sided dice, and they're marbled golden dice. So they literally look like little gold nuggets. Every round, we're rolling these gold nuggets. We, and there's a lot of clever gameplay in a very tiny little package. I was really impressed by it. Go watch the roundup from a few months ago. Just do a search for Rahdo Roundup Rolled West and you'll find it. But both Jen and I really liked it a lot. I've kept it. It's on my shelf. Great roll and write, Rolled West. Then 28 thumbs brings us Truck Off, the Food Truck Frenzy Roll and Write. I don't know if I said that correctly, but you'd expect. Yeah, truck off, everybody. This is what do you call it? Yeah, we're running a food truck. I'm sure we're trying to make the best meals to service customers and all that. I have to admit, I mentioned earlier, as time has gone on, I've discovered I'm really not that fond of making potions. I think I'm just not that fond of making meals in general. It's just not an appealing or appetizing, ironically, subject matter. But I still put this on the list anyway, because any roll and write that ships with a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12, and a D20, instantly I am interested in that game. Apparently, the type of die you roll depends on the type of food you're trying to make, whether it's, Asian cuisine or barbecue or desserts or French or whatever it might be. I don't know a lot of the details. I know I like roll and writes. I know I like having a choice between a wide variety of probabilities with different dice. And yeah, I like puns. Truck off. It's got 28 thumbs. Okay, also with 28 thumbs is Nocturnal, which I do not know much about. There's really not that much to say. I maybe shouldn't put this on the list because it looks like it's almost kind of a horror-themed worker placement game. very dark and gothic and whatnot. But I went on ahead and I included it because it is a dice rolling worker placement game, and I like that. I mean, I've liked that ever since Kingsburg a million years ago and Alien Frontiers. So I'm always keen on seeing if a game can come up with a new and interesting twist on straight up dice worker placement. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. It's certainly something I would go check out and find out if I was at the show. Then we move on to 29 Thumbs. Another game from Blue Orange, which again, I have no idea what it is. I'm pretty much putting it on here based on the strength of the box art, is Ninja Knight. Apparently, it's Japan in 1444, and we are ninja apprentices sent by our sensei to raid enemy villages and honor our clan, completing missions to do so. That's it. That is the entire description. So, what is it about the box art? Actually, I don't remember anymore. And the box art is very tiny. Let me open it up and see what it was that caught my attention with the box art. Oh, it's that. It looks like we throw ropes with grappling hooks a lot. That's interesting. If this is a game of traversal where we're kind of doing Spider-Man type stuff down on the ground, using our ropes, tightrope walking from building to building, that's kind of what the box art implies. And I'm using that to avoid the patrolling guard samurai, and then, that could be cool. It reminds me of an old PlayStation 1 era video game that I can't remember the name of that I loved to pieces. What was it? Oh, now I gotta look that up. PlayStation 1 ninja game. What was it? Tenchu. Yes, it reminds me of Tenchu, which I love to pieces. So maybe this will be good. Again, I don't know. I'd have to go find out in person because the publisher just couldn't be bothered to tell us anything about Ninja Knight. Then we move on to 31 Thumbs with the Queen of Hansa. And apparently this came out a while ago, so I know a few different channels have covered it, and I actually watched the excellent playthrough from, what channel was it? Grey Elephant Gaming. He did a wonderful run through, and I don't remember anything about the gameplay, but I remember thinking, wow, that looks really sharp, very tense, lots of fun, tough decisions as we draft cards to earn powers and score points. The original reason I was interested in it, though, is because it is from the artist, not the designer. The designer is Hyutaka Hatakeyama. I don't know his work, I'm afraid, but I am definitely interested in the art because it's Clemens Franz. And Clemens Franz doesn't do art for Japanese-produced games as a general rule, but he has now. That is implicitly intriguing right there, because I have always found Asian-developed games that come out of Korea or Japan or Taiwan, they always have a very different feel, even when they're straight Euros. Even when they're kind of replicating games that have already come before. They always feel different somehow. Like there's cultural influences that inform the designers and the kinds of mechanisms that they mix and match. So anyway, I don't remember the particulars, but I do remember being impressed when I watched Grey Elephant Gaming's run-through of it. I love Clemens Franz art. He's one of my top 10 favorite artists of all time, and hence, that's why the Queen of Hansa, I would love to copy that. If you Hobby Japan, if you are listening, they never contacted me, but anyway, it definitely sounds interesting. Then we move on to 32 massive thumbs for Kingsburg, the dice game. I just mentioned Kingsburg a few minutes ago, and I'm sure people are saying, "What the Kingsburg, the dice game? Kingsburg was always a dice game." Folks, no, it was not. It was a goods or a resource collection, set collection, Euro conversion game that happened to have dice in it. If anything, it was a dice worker placement game, but it was not a dice game. A dice game, if it's a dice game, it's just all about the dice and there's nothing else, or at least 99% about the dice. So I am interested in, what does Kingsburg, the true dice game, mean? I'm assuming it's probably a roll and write, although it doesn't look like it says that. But, it combines dice placement and press your luck, and worker placement. So, I don't know what that means, but I'm keen on checking it out, Kingsburg, the dice game. Then, I talked about this earlier, 32 Thumbs brings us Deckscape, the Curse of the Sphinx. And so this is the 4th Deckscape game. And like I said, I'll talk about these in my next roundup, which I'm going to record tomorrow or the day after, because I'm running out of time. I got to get that done before Essen, because there'll be several Essen games I'm actually talking about in that. Anyway, though, Deckscape will be one of them. And I have to admit, the luster has come off a bit. As much as I was waxing rhapsodic about it earlier, the 3rd and the 4th Deckscape games were still good. We still really enjoyed them, but they were no longer great. And I think our biggest problem is they seem like they're kind of straying away from one of their biggest strengths, which is really strong thematic ties between the story that's being told and the puzzles that are presented. Curse of the Sphinx finds us trapped in a pyramid, because we've been cursed by the Sphinx. And it is much more random and arbitrary. Just a bunch of puzzles that we have to solve to get out. It feels more like an escape room than the first 2 or 3 did. Maybe, is this the 5th and the 6th one? I don't remember now. But anyway, we still enjoyed it. It still had a lot of really cool things, but I'm really hoping Deckscape turns it around for the next one and doubles down on their biggest strength, strong thematic ties between the gameplay and the story. Regardless, we still very much enjoyed it. Oh, another interesting thing, for people who have been a little off put by Deckscape, because they are definitely an easier series than pretty much any of the other ones. The most recent 2 ones, Behind the Curtain, which was a magic show one, and this one, Curse of the Sphinx, they were by far the hardest. I would still not say they're anywhere near as hard as what Unlock or Exit the Game has given us, but they were definitely more challenging than the ones that had come before. Anyway, that's Deckscape, Curse of the Sphinx. Then 32 Thumbs gives us another game, Dawn of Mankind. It is another game from Tasty Minstrel. I believe it is another first-time designer. Good on Tasty Minstrel, going out there and finding upstarts and giving them a platform. I think that's absolutely great. Except I'm a big fat liar. I just looked. This is not a first-time designer. This is from the designer of Historia, which is a great, sadly overlooked, wonderful little civilization game. And let's see, he did Upon a Salty Ocean, and he did Manitoba. Okay, I take it back. Marco Pranzo, he is definitely well-established. Oh, and he did Dino World. Okay, yeah. Okay, well, hey, I now have a new reason. Before, I just had this on the list because it was Tasty Minstrel Games. It was a prehistory Euro-style game, and it had art from Kwanchai Moria, one of my top 10 artists, one of the best artists working in board gaming today. But, hey, it's also from Marco Pranzo, and I've played several of his games, and they are excellent. So, Dawn of Mankind, very interesting. The only concern, I don't know much about the gameplay here. Again, I just haven't bothered to look it up because I trust Tasty Minstrel. They have very rarely let me down. And I have heard this one, because it is about tribes competing for limited resources in, caveman era days, basically, Stone Age times. Apparently there can be some player versus player, some stealing, some attacking. I'm not quite sure. I hope that's not the case, because if so, forget I even mentioned it. But right now, I'm cautiously optimistic about the Dawn of Mankind. Then we move on to 33 Thumbs, which brings us Rolling Ranch, which, as you might have guessed from the title, is a roll and write game. That's right, Rolling Ranch. We're ranchers, rolling dice to make our ranch. I don't know. Roll and writes are good. And the interesting thing is this one is from Thundergriff. And the interesting thing is this is also from the same designer as Cartographers. Like I said, Cartographers was fantastic. So it's no surprise to me that Thundergriff decided to pick up another one from him. I hope this one, where we are trying to make the best ranch we can, dealing with disasters as hurricanes destroy our fences and the animals run away, and we're trying to rebuild after this disaster, as we try to rescue our animals. That sounds great. Hopefully we're not stealing from each other. Fingers crossed for Rolling Ranch. Then, 34 Thumbs, Pact. This is the second game I've talked about today from Bernd Eisenstein of, was it Ironwork Games? Iron Forge game? Let me look. Iron Games, just Iron Games. I will always be interested in any design that comes from Bernd because Peloponnese is still very solidly in my top 10 games of all time. And all of his games are always really sharp, even if we don't like them. I've never not thought they were good, smart, clever designs. Sometimes, though, they have a little bit too much take that in them for us. I don't know if Pact does or not. I'm intrigued, though, because this is a game about different tribes of goblins, all trying to succeed in in a tough world where it's hard to scrabble together the resources we need for our tribes to thrive. But the interesting thing is, we are constantly engaging in pacts with our neighbors. So I'm kind of thinking of the same stuff you see in Between Two Cities and other style games where, me and my player to the left, we're trying to work on something, and me and the player to the right, we're working on something completely different. And I'm trying to do the best to make sure they both work out really well, while the other stuff that other players on the other side of the table aren't doing good. I love that kind of interaction between competitors, and I don't know how well Pact does it, but I get the impression that's kind of the core of it. And that plus Burned Eisenstein means, well, it would get a lot more thumbs than 34 if it were me, but Pact. Then we move on to Fire with an exclamation point. And 36 thumbs is given to Freedom and Freeze's latest small box, fast-playing little card game that uses his, what is it called? The Fable system, where every time you play, new stuff gets added, new rules get added to the game, and old rules get shuffled out. Now, the first game that did this was Fabled Fruit, and Jen, I thought, wow, it's really neat, but man, this is a terrible, 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 terrible two-player experience because he didn't do anything to tighten the board. And so we liked the idea of it, not the implementation. But then, the following year, what was it? It was called Fine Sand. It had the same idea, and Jen and I loved it. It was, did it make our top 10? No, it didn't. But it definitely would have made Jen's top 10. It was certainly the game we played most last year, as we played that thing to death. We played it so many times, we went through all the rules and started again a second time. And if we were to sit down and play a game really quick, that's probably the game we'd sit down and play right now. Jen loves it to pieces. So, one miss, one super hit, and now he's doing it again with a game that is based on 80s era arcade video games. And both Jen and I, well, I'm 50, she's 49. So that speaks to us. That speaks to our childhood so strongly. I'm intrigued because you can play it solo, but I'm also intrigued because it's a two-player game. And I'm really into the subject matter of, classic 80s, Space Invaders, Galaga, Centipede, Pac-Man, whatever it might be. Very, very keen on checking out Fire! Okay. Then we 36 thumbs. And by the way, I know the 36 thumb doesn't really do much to help you with the countdown. We are over a third of the way through. We are fast approaching the halfway mark. And I think when we hit that halfway mark, I'm going to have to pause for a second because I am parched. I'm going to pause for a second right now and just get a quick swig. But I think my water bottle is almost empty. I don't know if you picked up any, the ASMR on that, but any of that silly type stuff. But let's move on to 36 with Coral Islands. I haven't played this, but I saw a prototype of it last year at UK Games Expo. And, it looks so pretty. This is a game that just is overflowing with gorgeous, beautiful, translucent, colorful dice. And it comes, I guess, with a couple different modes. There's like a competitive game and a cooperative game, or different rule sets. But the main thing is, we are stacking dice, doing, instead of tile laying, we're doing die laying, playing them out there to create coral reef patterns. And we lay them out, but we also stack them up. And I really liked Reef, but Reef is nowhere near as pretty as Coral Islands, so I'm definitely keen on giving Coral Islands a go, and it will be for sale at the show. Then we have 37 thumbs, Squire, the collector of the glorious rarities, which certainly sounds very ambitious. We are basically trying to collect works of art and put them on display in our mansions, I think, if I recall correctly. What was it about this? Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll tell you what was about this game that made me put it on the list. Because I don't know who the designer, Pavel Adamunchuk, is. He has done Architectura, which I did play, but I did not like because it was way too mean. Oh, I'm kind of worried about that. I do not know who the other designer is. Anastasia Ikanovia, who, this is her first design. You might have guessed, those are both Russian names. Here's the reason it's on the list, folks. For me, Cosmodrome. Cosmodrome, oh my gosh. After last year's fantastic Smartphone Inc., totally Totally mind farted there. Which, by the way, Smartphone Inc. is getting an expansion coming soon, so I believe they're going to send me a copy of the game in the expansion so I can cover it. Looking forward to that. But anyway, after the phenomenal Smartphone Inc. this year, they have already blown us away with, well, I talked about it earlier. One of my top 10 games of Essen is Aquatica. And another one that didn't quite make the top 10, which is going to come a little, well, I won't even say. And there's another one coming much higher up on the list that is also, that we have played, and I'll talk about in my roundup, which is phenomenal as well. So anyway, Cosmodrome is on fire. They seem to have found all the best designers in the entirety of Russia, gotten them all together, and they're making great games. So whatever they're putting out, I'm checking out, which is why I'm interested in Squire. Even though there's very little description of what it is, Cosmodrome is enough to put it on my list. Then we have Queens, to be or not to be. And I just did a video run through for that, or a rundown of it, a couple of weeks ago. Very nice little tile laying game. Interesting because there's 2 layers that goes on with the tile laying. The main polyomino pieces we're trying to piece together to make a nice little field for all our flowers. And then the flowers themselves that get laid on top of the polyomino pieces. Very clever game, really neat drafting that was kind of reminiscent of one of the Uwe Rosenberg polyomino games. The first, not the first one, not Patchwork, but the garden one. Cottage Garden? Yeah, I think. Reminiscence of Cottage Garden's draft, or Spring Meadows draft, but making a very, very different game. And Jen, I liked it quite a bit. But again, you can watch my video to find out why. Queens deserves at least 38 thumbs. Then, moving on to 39 thumbs. Folks, this is one that just barely missed my top 10. It did make my top 20 in the podcast that I did with Edward on Heavy Cardboard, which I mentioned earlier. And what is it? It's called Lux Eternia. This is from designer Tony Boydell. It is a game where our spaceship is damaged and we're about to we're getting sucked into a black hole. We're all going to die. We have to work together to repair the ship. And we do that by playing cards. We have a hand of cards. We must play every card in our hand every round. And here's the thing. They are multi-use cards. So we could play, I've got these cards. One of the cards in my hand I have to play to work on repairing. One of them I have to play for maneuvering the ship. One of them I have to play for events having to do with the black hole. Stuff like that. So I'm sure I will want, if this game is well designed, and Tony Boydell is a good designer, I'm sure there'll be a lot of tension. I want to play this particular card for all the good effects, but that means I can't play it for the bad effect because it wouldn't hurt us very much, which means I'll have to play this other card for the bad effect, and it'll hurt us really bad. It's a sharp design in theory. I haven't seen it in practice at all, but just the idea of this is so brilliant. I cannot wait to check it out. Lux Eterna. Then we are on to 43 thumbs for Coralia. Coralia, yes. Okay, why is this on my list? Oh, because it's from designer Michael Renick. And Michael Renick, he has a very illustrious career. People love the Pillars of the Earth. They're crazy about it. And people love Cuba and Santiago de Cuba. And I loved Merlin, which is a game that he collaborated with Stefan Feld last year. And actually, not for nothing, we really loved Fortuna, an earlier game of his. So Michael Renick, he's got the goods. He is a great designer. So this is a new game from him. And what is it about? Oh, it's about sending down submersibles to the bottom of the ocean to collect treasure. Diving robots and stuff like that. And apparently it's got a little bit of dice programming involved where you've got to, is this the one? Or there was one of them on here. No, it might have been a different game. This is a dice placement game. Oh, with Push Your Luck. Yeah. Nope, this is not the one I was thinking of. There's going to be one that comes a little later where you have to place your dice, but you have to play them in order, so you have to program with the dice or something like that. That's not what this one is, but still, Michael Renick makes Coralia interesting to me. But even more interesting, earlier, folks, in my top 10, you recall, I was very excited about Steamopolis from designer Gerhard Hecht. Gerhard Hecht has another game at Essen Spiel. It is the Befreiung the Befreiung der Reitberg, which, if I recall correctly, yes, is the liberation of Reitberg. So, no, it's not Reitberg, it's Rietberg. I remember how to pronounce my I's and E's in German, auf Deutsch. So, it is Die Befreiung der Rietberg. And this is basically, Rietberg is the castle from Legends of Andor, which is one of my favorite fantasy games of all time. One of the greatest co-ops of all time. And Gerhard Hecht is an amazing designer. I'm excited for Steamopolis. I'm excited for him going into the Andor universe to create, is it a dice game? I'm not really quite sure. There's not much information here. Doesn't matter. Gerhard gets an insta-look from me. The only problem is, it's going to be at the show, but only in German. And Andor games tend to have a lot of text on the cards. So sadly, this is for all those paste-up fans or German readers out there. It would definitely be one to check out. I'll have to wait, and hopefully next year in 2020, we'll get an English speaker's version of The Liberation of Rietberg. Alrighty, but then we move on to Boomerang, which is a super charming, it's not a roll and write. It's not a flip and write, it's a draft and write. We're drafting cards so we can write stuff on a piece of paper to have the ultimate down under vacation as we travel to all kinds of real world locations in Australia and see all the sights and whatnot. I actually covered this months ago. I guess I must have gotten an early edition of it or something like that. It's a super sharp little game. Jen and I enjoyed it quite a bit as a 2-player card drafting game, and we played it with my mother-in-law, and she's a total gaming novice, and she loved it too. It's great for everybody. Go check out my video to find out why with Boomerang. That was 50 thumbs, by the way. Then we move on to 51 thumbs, and The Captain is Dead, Dangerous Planet. Now, I did a run-through for The Captain is Dead, which was a pandemic-ish co-op that was basically set on a very Star Trek, the USS Enterprise style situation where players take on the role of different crew members. The captain is dead, and they're trying to keep the ship from blowing up while being under attack from not Romulans or Klingons, but their own science fiction aliens. So we really like The Captain is Dead. The sequel, The Captain is Dead Lockdown, we were not as fond of because the ship had been captured, and now it just wasn't quite, we weren't as powerful. There was a lot more bookkeeping. It just didn't quite work out for us. So this is the third one. We have now gotten out of lockdown and we beamed down to the surface of the planet, the dangerous planet, and I'm hoping it's more like the first game than the second game. It looks like it's a radically different style of game. The same awesome art style with the little acrylic standees that are just, the presentation of this game is phenomenal. The co-op of the first one was great. The second one, yeah. But this one, it looks like it's kind of a, defend the tower type thing as we go down the planet, and then our ship is just getting swarms of bad guys coming, and we have to set up traps to keep them at bay and stuff. I have high hopes for this. I really want to check it out because the first one was so great, and I'm such a diehard Star Trek fan. Even though we weren't that big a fan of the second one, we want to continue the Captain is Dead storyline with The Captain is Dead, Dangerous Planet. Then 52 thumbs for Roll to the Top, Laminate. And now, I already covered Roll for the Top. I have a copy of Roll for the Top. It's a great little roll and write. A little too abstract, but otherwise great stuff. Watch my run-through to find out why. Based on the title alone, I'm assuming it is coming back out, and probably nothing has changed about the game, except it no longer comes with pads of paper. It comes with laminated paper, so you don't have to worry about running out of the pads. And this is definitely a game that if you get it, it is so compulsively playable. It is definitely one of the ones where you would be in danger of running out of pieces of paper. So I think it's great that they're re-rolling it and making it an evergreen game with Roll to the Top, Laminate. Alrighty. And, and by the way, as I mentioned earlier, it's another roll and write where there are a bunch of different die types, and it works really well there as you're constantly shuffling in and out of the pool different dice depending on what types of numbers you're looking for. So trying to control the probabilities. Sharp game, and now it's laminated. That's cool. Roll to the Top, Laminate. Then, 52 thumbs also gets us to Circle the Wagons. Now, this is from a design trio, Steve Aramini, who did an excellent very little game. Oh, what was it called? It was a little train game. I'm trying to remember. Actually, I played a few of his games now that I think about it. Let me look him up. Let me look. Alrighty. Oh, Yardmaster. Yes, Yardmaster was nice. Groves was nice too. And Coin and Crown was fantastic, a great little deck builder. So Steve is definitely on my watch list. And he is teaming up here with Danny Devine and Paul Kluka. And Danny Devine, I just did a video for a new game of his that's going on Kickstarter this week called, it's not called Koi Pond, it was, Kohaku, which is about building a koi pond. And I thought that was a very, very clever dice laying game. And Harvest Dice was a nice little roll and write, too light for us. And let's see. Anyway, and then they're also teaming up with a designer, his name I do not recollect, Paul Kaluka. Paul, am I familiar with your games? No, I'm not. Or he did Sprawlopolis, which he also teamed up with the other two on that, which I haven't played Sprawlopolis. But anyway, Circle the Wagon is the three of them working together. So anyway, I'm interested because two of the three designers, I have liked their games. So right off the bat, that's interesting. But this looks really cool because this is a game where there's like literally, the wagons that have been circled are a bunch of the cards that are all in a circle around the center of the table, like wagons, bedding down for the night, circle of wagons around each other. And what happens is, as I understand it, on a round, a player whose turn it is not, the current picking player, picks one of the dice one of the cards in the circle, because that player secretly wants that card. They want to take that card for themselves. But what happens is the player to their right then has the choice. They can take that card, thereby denying it to the picking player, or they can skip and say, oh, I don't want that card. I want the next one over. And so that's a really interesting idea. It's kind of like a little microcosm of I Split, You Choose, where one player, of all the cards that are out there, I choose this one, and are you going to take it, or are you going to leave it for me, kind of a thing? No, I don't want that one, I want the next one. So you have a lot to think about if you're picking. There's the one you want for yourself, but you want to pick one that the player to your right won't take, so that's interesting. But then, once you get the cards, the other half of this game, I do not know what a good term for this is. It is, we're drafting these cards so we can stack them together to make, let's see, it's melding and splaying apparently is the aim. What am I thinking of? I'm thinking of Hanging Gardens. I'm thinking of Honshu. The notion these cards have grids on them, and we can put these cards next to each other, or we can stack these cards on top of each other and make basically a mosaic, a quilt of cards. Jen loves this. In every game we've ever seen where you get to do this, it's just one of her favorite things to do. So that core gameplay mechanism that she loves so much, with what sounds like a very clever drafting system, puts Circle the Wagons definitely on my list. And then on top of that, some designers I think highly of as well. Okay, that's 52 thumbs. All right, and you know what, folks? We are at the halfway point. We're still only at 57 thumbs. We still got a long ways to go, but I'm just looking at the scroll bar. So I am going to pause for a second because I got to go to the bathroom. So I'll leave you alone for a bit, but don't worry, folks. I'll be right back. Okie dokie, folks. Welcome back. We are ready to continue with a game that has 57 thumbs, and I do not remember at all why I put Maya, M-A-Y-A, on the list. Let's see, it's a tile-laying game. Oh, okay, it's probably because it's from designer Brett J. Gilbert, who is one half of the design team that brought us the ever excellent Elysium. And again, folks, I cannot stress enough just how amazing Elysium is. And Brett and, who did he design that with? Now I'm drawing blanks. I'm starting to lose it, folks, and I'm only halfway through. Come on, wake up. Rahdo, you can do it. Oh yeah, Matt Dunstan and Brett Gilbert. I always like it when these two guys work together the best, and this time he's working with somebody else, Trevor Benjamin. Let's check out Trevor's gameography. Trevor, Dice Heist. That was a nice little game. Okay. And, I've heard good things about Mandala. Alrighty. Well, the two of them are working together to bring us Maya. It looks like it's a tile-laying game where we're laying tiles to the same central board, probably trying to cut each other off and whatnot. So I'm not really sure if it's good or not, but at some point, I thought enough of this to put on the list, and it's a long list. So that's Maya. Then we move on to Jeek Wan, the Eastern Mechanist. So this is an interesting one, and in fact, I've actually played it. They sent me a prototype. I'll get it covered for the roundup by Tuesday, hopefully. And it is a game where players are drafting gears to add to a little grid that's in front of them. And the gears have different numbers on them and different colors. And when we take them from the repository and put them in our own little grid, we are trying to get them lined up in the same row or column as these robots that we're trying to build. And the robots have certain numbers that have to be achieved. Hey, this is a level 8 robot, so all the gears in the row where that robot is have to total 8. So I need like a 5, a 1, and a 2 or something like that. So you are taking that into account, but you're also paying attention to the color of the dice, if I recall correctly. I played this a few weeks ago. Because as you lay them down, depending on where they go adjacent to each other, you can start collecting the resources you need to be able to draft more gears. And so every gear you put down, there's two things you're trying to balance at once. And it does create some interesting puzzly gameplay. And the interesting thing is once you build one of those robots, 2 of the 3 gears in that row get removed because they become part of the robot. And 1 gear gets left. And then that gear becomes the centerpiece of a new row or column that you're trying to make to build some other robots. So you can try to combo string stuff together. I remember thinking it was pretty cool. I do need to look at it again for the roundup. But yeah, it was definitely good looking, and it was kind of a very quirky game. Really exercised our gray matter in a different way than we're used to. So it made the list. With 57 thumbs, G. Guan, the Eastern Mechanist. Then we have On Tour. And if On Tour wasn't already in my top 10 most anticipated games for Gen Con a few months ago, it would have made my top 10 most anticipated games for here. It is maybe the greatest roll and write ever, or certainly one of. Certainly like top 3. And I've only played the prototype of it all those years ago, last year I guess. I would love to get a final version of it because, oh man, Jen and I, we just loved it to pieces. The perfect blend of strategizing and tactics and push your luck as you roll dice round after round after round to try to plot out the ultimate route for your rock and roll band, which is On Tour. Go check out the run through. You can actually download a piece of paper and print it out and play along with Jen and I and see if you can beat us. It's so good. It deserves way, way, way more than 60 thumbs On Tour. Then, hey, it's another roll and write with 61 thumbs. Welcome to Dino World. I covered this as well. And when I covered it, at the time, I said this is probably the heaviest, crunchiest roll and write ever. And it's a game of trying to build up your own little Jurassic Park. And you do it by literally hand drawing in the pens for the dinosaurs and the power sources and the roads to get around to the different pens and stuff like that. It's a surprisingly crunchy game. It has now been eclipsed. Yeah, it has been eclipsed by Roman Roll, which I just covered last month, which is on Kickstarter right now, so it will not be at the show. Or maybe it'll be there in demo form. I don't know. Because I'm not doing demos today, folks. If you want to know about demos, go listen to the Heavy Cardboard podcast I did, because I did do my top 10 demos there, and I literally don't remember what I said. I'm thinking Roman Roll was on the list for demos. Anyway, though, Welcome to Dino World is a very, very crunchy, surprisingly deep and meaty Euro roll and write as well. And for people who like the idea but don't want to have such a heavy, heavy game, it also comes with simpler gateway rules as well, which is very smart because there's a lot going on in Welcome to Dino World. Then, 63 thumbs brings us Conspiracy, the Abyss, Conspiracy Abyss Universe. This is a sequel to Abyss, which came out a few years ago from, Bruno Cathala and somebody else, I don't remember who. Or maybe he designed that one by himself. But it was a very well-received, insanely gorgeous, and kind of cutthroat for my taste, Euro-style goods collection game. And this is a sequel. I don't know if the gameplay is even remotely like it, but what I can tell you is from the box cover, it looks gorgeous. And I suspect the gameplay will be good because it is Bruno Cathala working with Charles Chevalier. I don't think this is the first time they have worked together. Charles was his co-designer. So the two of them have gotten back together to do a sequel. It's got gorgeous art. Of course, everybody knows who Bruno Cathala is, one of the most well-loved and prolific modern designers of Euro games. And, Five Tribes Man and all that. Let's see. Charles also worked on Antarctica, which I heard was good, but I never played. and Kanagawa, which I heard was good but never played. Sultania, which I heard was good but never played. Guilds of Cadwallon, which I heard was good but never played. There's a repeating motif here with Charles's work, but the two of them are back together, and fans of Abyss should probably seek out the sequel, Conspiracy Abyss Universe. I don't know what it's about. It's card drafting, pattern building, set collection, and tile placement. I.e. Euro-y stuff. Okay. 68 thumbs for Draftosaurus. Alrighty. Ooh, wow. 4 designers. Antoine Bauza, Corentin Lebrat, Ludovic Malblanc, and Theo Riviera. And I remember seeing a video about this, because I think Dice Towers I think they've already got a copy of it, and Tom did a video for it, and I thought, that sounds really cool. It is a drafting game, but instead of everybody drafting from a hand of cards, it's a bag building game as a drafting game, because there's a bag full of little wooden dinosaurs. And on your every turn, you reach into the bag and you pull out a random assortment of dinosaurs, and then you try to lay them out on your own little dino Jurassic theme park type thing. And you're trying to get the right types of dinos next to each other and make sure nobody eats anybody else or escapes, or all the standard Jurassic Park, the board game type stuff that seems to be par for the course. And mostly I remember seeing the video. I know Tom really liked it. I thought, wow, that looks really clever. So yeah, apparently it'll be at the show. Draftosaurus. Then you've got 70 thumbs for Walking in Provence. And a few months ago, in my July solo month, I covered the prequel to this, Walking in Murano. Or was it Walking in Burano? One of them. Burano or Murano, one or the other. And that turns out to be a wonderful, phenomenal little card drafting game, and using those cards to build up beautiful buildings. It had a lot of tension, a lot of really crunchy stuff, while still being a nice, light little package. So anyway, the same publisher, and I think the same designer, are back this year to continue the series. Instead of Walking in Burano, we're Walking in Provence. And while it still has the same really luscious and gorgeous and bright and colorful and evocative art, it's a radically different game. I talked about this earlier. What was it? A melding and splaying game? This is a game where we're trying to draft the cards so that we can stack them on top of each other and create little jigsaw puzzle, mosaic quilt works of cards. I remember how much I said Jen loves that kind of thing? Well, and we both loved the previous Walking In, so I expect this new Walking In will definitely rate high. This is actually, again, in the podcast, the other podcast, this was in my top 20. I'm that excited about it, although it only has 70 thumbs, which is wrong. Also with 70 thumbs is Ticket to Ride London, which is fantastic. I talked about it in last month's roundup. It has revitalized my interest in Ticket to Ride, which I thought had long dried up. But it's a great little version of Ticket to Ride that, instead of taking 45 minutes to an hour, takes 10 to 15 minutes. So it's super fast, super turbocharged, has some interesting new gameplay elements that have not appeared in Ticket to Ride before, kind of an area dominance sort of thing. And yeah, just sharp. And probably the best pieces ever, because instead of little trains, they're little London double-decker buses. So Ticket to Ride London is awesome at 70 thumbs. Ticket to Ride London might make my top 10 of the year. Maybe. It's too early to say, but it's really good. Then we've got Fast Sloths. This is from Freedom and Freeze with 70 thumbs, and it is a funky sounding game. This is a race game. We are sloths trying to race from one side of the board to the other. But we're sloths. We're cute, or we're cuddly, lazy, and slothful, according to the description. Which is to say, we don't move very far, very fast. So, to work through our race, what we're trying to do is jump on the back of other jungle creatures who have different movement rules. They move faster or slower, they fly, they move on the ground, etc., etc. And what we're trying to do is basically the board is awash with all these animals that are going to move in specific ways every round, and we are trying to cleverly plot out our path by moving from one animal to another. Think Frogger, but instead of all just logs moving in the same direction, they're all the logs have a mind of their own and follow different rules. This sounds like a really cool idea, and apparently every time you set it up, you're going to get a different combination of animals that you can hitch a ride on. So, I like this idea a lot. We're not the biggest fans of race games, to be honest, but I would definitely want to check this one out, called Fast Sloths. Okay, then 71 Thumbs brings us Robin von Locksley. Let's see. I wonder if it's going to be called Robin of Locksley for the English version. Anyway, the interesting thing is, this is from Uwe Rosenberg. Hey, don't think I've heard of him for a while. And this is a tiny little game. This is not one of his big box Euro epics. This is something more along the lines of, his polyomino series, except it's not about polyominoes. It's totally not. He's doing something completely different. And I remember I looked this up a couple days ago when I put this on the list, and I don't remember anything about it now. Oh, it's there's a big grid. Oh yeah, because we're all competing to be the best Robin Hood, basically, stealing from the rich to giving to the poor. And so there's a big grid of all the loot we can grab, and we're trying to set collect because we have a marker that can move around on this grid like a knight from chess, 2 forward and 1 to the side kind of a thing. And so we're jumping around like knights, grabbing loot, trying to collect it, because that lets our assistant, who is on a completely different track, move forward and make progress depending on the type of loot we collect. It sounds really simple, and but really, really clever as well. And it looks like it's got a ton of setup variability because the outer ring that our assistant is moving on is full of tiles that require a different combination of things for us to do. So we're trying to move into specific spots relative to the board or relative to each other. We're trying to collect certain sets of things. Also, that we can hit the achievements that we need to make our other meeple move as we race around the track. I'm enthusiastic for this, but hey, it's a Uwe Rosenberg game. Chances are it's not going to be another Hengist, so I'm definitely keen on checking out Robin von Locksley. Okay, then moving right along, we have Florenza the dice game. Now I have covered Florenza, and I have covered Florenza the card game. So I feel honor-bound to cover Florenza the dice game. And it's sad, they were actually going to send me a copy of it so that I could get it covered before the convention, but apparently something went wrong with shipping and they're late, and now they're worried they might not make it at the show. I guess they're going to have it at the show, but they couldn't get me one so I could cover it in time. I expected I would know more about the game by now because I would have played it, but since I haven't, all I know is the previous Florenzas were fantastic little games, and I like dice games. And roll and writes, which is what this is. So, Florenza the roll and write, Florenza the dice game, yes please. Then we've got Corinth, which is another roll and write at 73 thumbs from, Days of Wonder. And I covered this a few months ago, so I guess it's only just now reaching Europe. It's a good game. It didn't get as much love from other reviewers. Jen and I, we were pretty impressed by it, but... heck, go watch my run-through, because now I'm second-guessing myself because other people didn't think it was quite as good. But no, Jen and I, we liked it. I kept it. And, it's hard for me to keep a game these days, and I kept it. So it's good. It's a good, fun little roll and write. If you want to know why, go watch my run-through. Copenhagen, the roll and write, at 73 thumbs. Oh my gosh, we're in roll and write central. Copenhagen is phenomenal. It's got to be one of the best. I need to do a top 10 Tetris-y games. Totally. And I think Copenhagen would rate pretty high. And the same designing team has now gotten together to make a roll and write. How will that work? Probably pretty similar, because one of the reasons the original was so good is because it did a great job of replicating the feel of Tetris, with the pieces actually coming at the top of the board and having to slide down. I expect it'll probably be the same thing, except we're just writing them instead of literally placing tiles. But we'll see. I'm definitely keen to check it out because Copenhagen was phenomenal. Okay, then 73 thumbs for Artsy, which I did talk about in the most recent roundup, I think, or maybe the previous one. This is a great new puzzly little game of making the best art gallery you can, and it's clever with the way we stack our cards together to make different areas of our gallery so that the people who are coming to see will be able to see the right type of art and score us the most points. But the important thing is, every time we play these cards, which is effectively like advertising to get people come, we also generate interest in the galleries of our opponents. And so there is a lot of paying attention to what your opponent is doing and piggybacking off of them. Because while I don't know exactly what cards are in their hand, I can see the backs of their cards, and therefore I know what colors they might play. And if I know what colors they might play, I have an idea of what types of people might be attracted to my gallery when it's not my turn. and that makes the game pretty special. The other thing that makes Artsy special, it's from Alex Kevern, who is a phenomenal puzzly designer. Ever since we played Sentient, I've been watching his games because they've all been very, very good, and Artsy was no exception. Then at 75 thumbs, we're picking up speed now, folks. We've got a Fistful of Meeples. This is from Johnny Pack. A little while ago, I talked in my top 10 about Coloma, another game, which was from designer Johnny Pack. Another game that came out earlier this year, which I talked about for the Gen Con preview, was Sierra West, which is a fantastic game from designer Johnny Pack. So, this is his third game of the year. All three of them are set in the American West. Two of the three were fantastic. One of them is a top 10 of the year, not potential, and the other one is really amazing too. So, Fistful of Meeples, I expect to be very good. It is Meeples moving around on a Mancala, and it's basically worker placement in the Old West on a Mancala with Meeples. Okay, you had me at Johnny Pack, quite frankly, and another Old West game. Coloma and Sierra West were amazing, so I'm looking forward to Fistful of Meeples. 76 thumbs gets us Egizia, the Shifting Sands. Now, Egizia came out years ago, and it was definitely ahead of its time because it was when worker placement games, very few worker placement games were doing anything really interesting with the mechanism. But Egizia was interesting because every time you placed a worker on the Nile, it represented you going further and further down the Nile, and you could no longer place workers further back. So it was kind of a time track game mixed with worker placement, and it was really clever. Although, I don't remember why. This was long before I started doing Rahdo runs through. I played it, and we got rid of it, and I couldn't tell you why. So there must have been something. Maybe it probably just didn't work as well with 2. Anyway, I'll get to find out because it's finally, after many, many years of being all but impossible to get, it's a second edition, or a new version of it, because it's called Shifting Sands. I don't know what's changed or been enhanced, but I'm happy for people because it's been so hard to get for so long that it's about time. It's coming out. Shifting Sands, Egizia. Hooray! 76 thumbs also gets us Clip Cut Parks, which is fantastic. I would not be surprised if you could get Jen to make a top 10 for the year 2019. I would be shocked if this didn't make it into her top 10 because she loves it. This is a game that comes with scissors. It is not a roll and write, it's a roll and cut. We roll the die, and that tells us how many cuts we can make on our piece of paper. Our piece of paper is a unique grid full of colorful blocks, or actually like attractions of a park, like bandstands and bushes and hot dog stands and stuff like that of different colors. And what we're trying to do is we have objectives. We are trying to cut up this piece of paper to basically build Tetris shapes. So instead of, drafting to get the Tetris shapes and building them, we're actually cutting up a piece of paper to build Tetris shapes, but we're always limited in the cuts we can make based on what the die roll is. And it is brilliant. It is an incredible gimmick, and it's surprising how tricky it is because you can never be sure. And when the die tells you to make 2 long 3-length cuts, you're like, that'll ruin all my plans. Okay, what am I going to do? And coming up with solutions to problems that the dice gives you, it's a very sharp, compelling game. Jen loves it. I like it quite a bit. Clip Cut Parks. Jen loves it so much, it actually made my top 20. 77, but you'd know that if you'd already checked out Edward's podcast. 77 thumbs gets us Dreamscape. This is a gorgeous... It's interesting. I was almost about to say it was an abstract tile laying game, but it's not. It feels abstract, but it's actually us trying to literally build dreams and they're not tiles. What were they? What were we laying? Oh, they were discs, colored discs. And we're basically making these little abstract sculptures, but we're trying to grab the right discs to lay them, to make these little sculptures based on dream cards, like, tree at the top of a hill, or, hidden grotto. And you see, oh, okay, this is supposed to be a hidden grotto, but what is it? It's a bunch of discs that are all colored and shaped and just stacked up on top of each other. But if you look at, that does look like a little hidden grotto. That's really clever. And then, so we're trying to build these dreamscapes based on what the cards say, and we also have a little character that moves around following specific rules. It's a sharp, sharp game. Neat action selection system too, not entirely unlike Vinos, in fact. So it's got a lot of great stuff going on. Just a super chillaxed, but actually quite surprisingly crunchy little brain burner, Dreamscape. Liked it a lot when it was on Kickstarter last year. Early last year, in fact, before I left Malta, if I recall correctly. Anyway, that's 77 thumbs, then 78 thumbs. Ooh, Rush MD. This is a sequel to Artipia Games' Kitchen Rush, which was a fantastic real-time worker placement game where our workers are hourglasses and it's everybody working to cooperatively trying to beat the dinner rush as more and more customers come into our restaurant and we have to make meals for them. And that was a very good game. The sequel, Rush MD, same basic idea, but now we're in an emergency room trying to keep people alive. I personally find that to be a much, much, much more compelling subject matter. And I fully expect that it's going to take the lessons learned from the first design and improve on it greatly, and it was already a great design. So I'm very excited about Rush MD. I should stop saying when these make my top 20, but it made my top 20. Okay, 81 thumbs. It gives us Old Masters. And what was it about this one? What was it? Oh. This is a worker placement game where we are, master painters in Paris, back in Renaissance era time, I think. Or maybe it's turn of the century. I'm not quite sure when. But regardless, it's a worker placement game where we're trying to collect our paints and mix our paints and make our paintings and the kind of stuff you would expect. But the interesting thing is the worker placement board has a central spinning element to it. And because every round this board spins, it completely reprograms the functions of all the worker placement spots. So if you don't like the way the worker placement is lined up now, wait a few rounds and the board will be radically different. And you could try to go for things in a different way. This is a great idea. I've recently played Pharaoh, Pharaoh, something like that, which did the same basic idea, and it was great there. I expect it'll be great here as well. I know Tom Vassell on the Dice Tower, he got an early copy. He did a video. It looked great there. So I expect good things for Old Masters. Then, 88 thumbs gets us Obscurio. This is the latest game from the design team that keeps putting out... Yeah. Oh, folks, I'm really losing. I was thinking of something else. I was going to say these were from the people who made Mysterium, but it's not. This is from the people who made One Key. And One Key, like Mysterium, oh boy, there've been a bunch of games ever since Mysterium where there's one person trying to give a clue via some means, and everybody else is trying to figure out what you're trying to do. Everybody's trying to, code names is what I'm thinking of, oh man. Okay. I've been going too long. I'm really starting to lose it. Key Jam. No, Letter Jam. And Mysterium. And First Contact. And Shadows of Amsterdam. You know what I'm talking about. There's a bunch of these games. Obscurio is another one. I don't know what really makes this one different, because one person's handing out cards as clues and stuff like that. I do know there's one thing that makes this one stand out from the other ones. If you play at a higher player count, there's a traitor. One of the clue receivers is actually working against the group. That's really interesting, trying to figure out who is the traitor and all of that, but because the clue giver can't tell everybody. But I expect that will completely disappear in a two-player game. So I don't know what is going to make this one stand out from a bunch of other games, including the excellent One Key from the same group that I covered in a roundup a few months ago. But anyway, Obscurio, I like these ideas. I like seeing new and different ways to do it. It's a shame I won't get to play the Trader version, but c'est la vie. That's Obscurio at 88 thumbs. 89 thumbs has Cat Cafe, which is another roll and write. And this time we are... Oh, it just looks so charming. And I saw a video done by Slicker Drips, who does a fantastic... If you never checked out Slicker Drips' channel, but you enjoy my channel, you're missing out. Because he basically copies my style to the letter. He does the same type of run-throughs, same format. He cleared it all with me. I said, please, by all means, copy my format. The more people who do it, the more videos I get to enjoy. And so he did a video for this, and it was great. Super sweet and charming, clever, fun stuff. Yet another roll and write, lightweight game, roll the dice, try to make the perfect cafe for your cats, with all the cat toys and cat What are those cat scratching posts and cat high beams and stuff like that? It looks really cute and clever. I remember liking it when I saw Tom of Slicker Drips do the video, which is why I marked it as interested. Cat Cafe. Then 92 thumbs for Sprawlopolis. And this is from, we talked about them earlier, the triple team up of Steve Aramini, Danny Devine, and Paul Kluka. Everything I said earlier about these guys being good designers, well, it applies here as well. And this is a tile-laying city-building game that is cooperative. I am very, very keen on a cooperative SimCity-esque board game. Because I like SimCity, and I like cooperating with my life rather than trying to beat her, and more often than not, getting beaten by her. So any opportunity to work with her to build the ideal city is well appreciated by us. We love City Council. There's another game that'll be coming up a little bit later, a bit higher on the list that does the same thing. So, Sprawlopolis, yes please, more co-op SimCity games. Totes. Okay, Humboldt's Voyage at 92 thumbs. Oh, why did I put this one on the list? It's the designers, Nestor Mangone. Now, Nestor has been involved with several really super well-received games over the last few years, Euro-style games. I'm talking Expo 1906. I'm talking Newton. I am talking, let's see, was there another one? I think there was another one. Newton Expo 1906, and, yes, the most important one, because I thought Expo 1906 and Newton were both great games, really sharp designs, but Jen didn't like them so much because they featured the baby step syndrome that kind of bothers her. If you wonder what I'm talking about, go watch my Newton Final Thoughts. But anyway, he is also behind Masters of Renaissance, Lorenzo El Magnifico, the card game, which I just put a video for up this morning, and that game is phenomenal. Absolutely love it to pieces. So, based on the strength of those three games, Nestor gets an insta-look every time he puts out a game. And I don't know much about this. It's Napoleonic era, traveling around. Apparently, Alexander von Humboldt was the second Columbus of his time, and so we will be discovering the world with a Mancala. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. When I looked at the board, I thought, ooh, that looks very interesting. It kind of looks similar to the world traversal that we had in Newton, but the whole board we're traveling around as we try to discover new worlds as Humboldt is a Mancala. So, like Trajan or Five Tribes, we're picking up a group of tokens and moving along a path and trying to end up someplace. But instead of just it being a freewheeling go wherever you want kind of a thing, we're actually following transportation routes. That sounds really cool. And Nestor's other work is very, very sharp. Oh, he has a co-designer, to be fair. Remo Conzadori. Let's see. Remo, what do I know from you? Okay. Oh, and Remo, Alibaba was nice. That was a fun little light game. And, and Manitoba, I still haven't played it. I certainly mean to. He was the other co-designer on Expo 1906. Okay, so cool. Yeah, that's interesting. I love Mancalas. So a new take on Mancalas from good designers? Yes, please. Humboldt's Great Voyage. 92 Thumbs also gives us Bloomtown. I filmed this last week. This is a great, great game. Wonderful. Maybe the best tile drafting SimCity style game since Quadropolis. And if you watch my video for Quadropolis, you know Jen and I love that to pieces, and we really, really enjoyed Bloomtown as well. I don't have to dwell too much on it. It's great. It's tough little tense, fast decisions as you lay tiles to score points, but also where you lay those tiles determine what new tiles you'll be able to draft. So there's an interesting mix of long-term and short-term planning and tension to push your luck. Great stuff. Bloomtown definitely deserves to be at the upper echelon. 93 Thumbs brings us Skytopia. This was, I mentioned earlier, there was another Cosmodrome game coming, and this is it. I don't rate it quite as high as Aquatica, but I was still very impressed, and I plan on getting it in my roundup by Tuesday. Maybe if I'm lucky, I'll actually film a run-through of it. I don't know, the jury's still out. I've got time to film one more run-through, and I'm not sure which one to do. And it might be Skytopia, but it'll definitely be, I'll show it in the rundown, if nothing else. And, oh man, this is good. This is not only from the same publisher as Smartphone Inc., it's the same designer as well. And it's a very, very cool game. It's basically Laputa, Castle in the Sky, the board game, as we have floating kingdoms in the sky floating around on clouds, and we're trying to build a series of buildings. But we have to do it by committing, well, basically we can decide, oh, this is a building I want to build. I could build it fast, which means it's, like it'll be built the next round, but it'll cost me a ton of money, and money is tight. Or I could say I'm going to build it very slow, and it might take 4 rounds or even 5 rounds before the thing is built. So I'm committing to having it built far, far in the future. The important thing is, whenever it gets built, I take it, I add it to my floating kingdom, and if it's a red building, it activates all the other red buildings I've already built. And so you can make combo chains of stuff happen. And very Deus, if you remember Deus, which I absolutely love, the card combo chains there, it takes that idea, but mixes it with this awesome time management game where, okay, I'm going to build this. It's going to take me a long time. In the meantime, I got some more money, and now I can build this other thing. So I'll build this building quicker than the one that's going to take longer so that I can, get them to dovetail off each other. It's really sharp, a lovely presentation as well. Cosmodrome, I think, has another hit on its hands with Skytopia in the Circle of Time. Then, 95 Thumbs has Dale of Merchants, the collection. I have talked about every Dale of Merchants little mini box standalone expansion so far. It's a great a great deck building game, Dale of Merchants, where we are trying to run our own little merchant stalls in the Dale of Merchants, and there's an equal focus on building our deck up, but also ripping it apart. We build our decks up so we can gather resources and build and do all the deck building stuff, but then we tear our deck apart to actually set up our stalls and score points. And it's very good. And every new expansion / standalone game that has come out has added more and more interesting merchants. They've all been collected now in a big box collection, which is great. And I believe this actually adds a bunch of new merchants as well. So hooray! Dale of Merchants is fantastic. From designer-artist Sammy Laxo, he does it all by himself. He deserves a lot of credit. He's kind of like... Ryan Lockett gets a lot of praise for being a one-stop shop, doing all his own art and design and publishing and everything else. Sammy's doing it too, and it's very impressive. Dale of Merchants is fantastic. So, 96 Thumbs, we have Nova Luna. Okay, and, this is an abstract game which I would have totally passed on if it weren't for the fact that it is a design by a duo, Uwe Rosenberg and Korn van Moorsel. Uwe, you know who that is. Korn van Moorsel, he is the guy who gave us Habitats and, I want to say Pipe Factory. It's not Pipe Factory. Fun Factory. Factory Fun and Factory Funner. Factory Fun and Habitats are bonkers amazing tile laying games. Some of the best tile laying games has ever been done. And Nova Luna is a tile laying game as well. Uwe Rosenberg, of course, is one of the greatest board game designers of all time as well. So these two working together, even though it sounds like a completely total abstract tile laying game, probably even more abstract, sadly, than Azul, I gotta check it out. I must check it out, because these two working together, it's gonna be something special. Nova Luna, check it out. I suspect it'll be amazing. Then, I don't know why, the next game has more thumbs at 97 Thumbs, Mastabas. Okay, this is from, what is it about Mastabas? I do not remember this at all. Okay. Felix Julian, don't know the designer, don't know the publisher, GDM Games. Do I know Felix? Felix has done several games I've never heard of. All right, so that's not why I marked it. Why did I mark Mastabas as to check out? Okay, each opens... oh my gosh. Okay, wow. Folks, I am so sorry. I am getting so tired. Okay, let me just go look. Maybe it's the pictures. Maybe the pictures will say 1,000 words. Because there's actually a fairly long description. Oh, yes, okay, I know. Yes, it was the pictures. Okay, apparently we are searching through a crypt and trying to find treasure. That's fine. That's fair enough. I don't know anything about this game other than this one picture of it. We build the crypt by laying cards on the table. The cards represent corridors with stuff in it. And we put the corridors down, and then we have our little meeples, and we move down the corridor. So we're building a maze that we will travel through to race and collect goodies. Fair enough. The The thing that's cool is this is a game where you don't lay your cards down in a perfect grid. You are allowed to be sloppy and have things go off at whatever angle you want. So over the course of the game, you end up making a very organic looking maze to travel through. And I have to say, I love that. There are very, very few games that do this. I'm thinking of Kodama, the Tree Spirits, is a game where you do this by making really cool organic tree shapes. So, I mean, I'm looking at a game like, they built up this whole big maze, and it looks like just this big jumbled mass of paths that have grown up on the board. So I'm curious to see how this works because I love breaking free from the grid. I like just having the freedom to go whichever direction you want. And it looks like that's what Master Boss does. So that's why I marked it as interested. After that, we have Century, A New World, which is the third game in the Century series. First we had Century Spice Road, then Eastern Wonders, and now A New World. And I covered Spice Road and Eastern Wonders, but then I stopped hearing from the publisher for months. I sent them emails, they never replied. I figured, I must have gotten on their bad side somehow. They're not going to send me the third one. And I was a bum because the cool thing about Century is these three games can all combine into one Uber game. And while I wasn't a fan of Century Spice Road or Century Eastern Wonders, when you put the two together, it became a deep and rich enough game to really be exciting and fun to play. So I always wanted to see how the third one came to be, but like I said, I figured I was never going to get a review copy, so I got rid of the other ones. Oh no! And but never fear. Apparently, the interesting thing about Century is there's two lines. There's the Euro style, colorful cubes, Silk Road, era of discovery. Standard Euro style setting, but then they had this fantasy setting where instead of cubes you had crystals and it was much more magical realm, and I was always bummed. I wanted the magical realm, but they said, the magical realm version is only ever going to get the first game. If you want the second and third game and see how they all mix and match, you're going to have to get the Euro-y one. So I was okay, fine, the Euro-y one is fine. But then they revealed, we're going to do the full series for the Euro-y one as well. So when I found that out, and I thought, they're never going to send me the third one anyway, okay, fine, I'll dump these and I'll start seeking out the magical ones instead. So I'm looking forward to next year when Century A New World comes out in the mystical, magical, crystal generating form, and I'll be able to get all three of them and finally see how all three games work together. But in the meantime, if you've still got the Euro versions, hey, A New World will be available. I don't know how they connect, but I'm curious to see how it all works out in the end. 100 thumbs, folks. Oh man, we've only got a third left to go, but then we got the expansions as well. Alrighty, and we're at 2 hours. Okay, let's keep going. All right, ever on the road goes. Kara, or Kari. I don't. You can look in the show notes to see how it's spelled. I'm too tired to spell things anymore. Why did I do this? I don't know these designers. It's Devier Games. I don't really know them that well. Yes, I remember. This is a tile laying game. And here's what I love about it. In theory, like Glenmore, every time I put a new tile down, I activate all the adjacent tiles. That is such a brilliant mechanism, and you've seen it in very, very few games. I mean, Glenmore knocked it out of the park, and there's been a few others that do it, but very few, and I would love to see more games, and this is one that does it. Although the interesting thing is, in Glenmore, everybody's building their own private little one. Here, we're building a public communal one. So that should be very, very interesting. You just put a tile down to activate those. Now I'll activate your tile and the other tiles. Hooray! I love the idea of that. The art looks very cute and anthropomorphized animals. I don't know much, but as soon as I saw, tile A activates all adjacent tiles, I love that. I would like to see a new version of that. And Kari, or Care, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, seems to provide it. Okay. After that, 6 castles. This is on the list because it's from the design team of Costa and Rolla. They're like Prince and Madonna. They don't have full names. It's a first for the board game industry. 2 guys who both only have one name. And their other game that they have designed, Yinsi, I haven't played it yet. I've got it, but I haven't played it yet. And apparently it's very, very good. Big, heavy, crunchy Euro, all about silver in in I guess, industrial era Japan, I believe, something like that. Anyway, Six Castles is the other game that they have brought out. And considering how well their other one has been received, I assume this one will be very good too. And in all honesty, that's kind of all I know about it. It's territory building, medieval tile placement. And it's from those two designers. And I don't have the strength to read the description. And looking at a picture of the game... Oh, here's the other thing about it. The other thing that's very exciting, now that I can see it again. It looks like it does that thing I've been talking about that Jen loves so much. Laying down cards and laying them over the top of each other and splaying them and melding them and stuff like that. Although, unlike most games that do this, apparently we're doing it into a communal thing. Like the... there was a Civilization game that did this. No, it's not Tapestries. I can't think of it. I've lost the will to live, folks. Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. But I will keep soldiering on. But anyway, if in fact that's what it does, and it looks like that's what it does, and it's from these two designers that seem to be hot up-and-comers, Six Castles could be pretty cool. After that, okay, here's one I know, King Domino Duel. I actually did a run-through with Paul Grogan of Gaming Rules a few months ago. That was a fun little run-through. I had a fun time doing it. It's a very cool little dice version of King Domino for 2 players only, where every round you roll 4 dice. I'm going to draft 2, you're going to draft 2, and we put those dice together to turn them into a domino, which we will then use to expand our little kingdom by writing. It's a roll and write version of King Domino for 2 players only. Oh my gosh, I've got hiccups. And it's great. And if you want to know why, go check out the run-through that I played with Paul. It was just fun. I'm going to get a drink of water and hopefully kill these hiccups, because that's going to really cramp my style. Fingers crossed. Okay. No one's here to scare me. Moving right along. Trails of Tucana. Yeah, this is good stuff. This is another one. Another can. It might be the last thing I film before Essen, because I've got it. It'll make it into the roundup if nothing else. But this is basically the sequel to Avenue from Elif Svensson and Christian Ostby. If you remember, Avenue, Jen, I loved it. It made the top 10 of the year. It's an incredible bingo style roll and write game except it's not rolling, it's flipping cards. Every round a card gets flipped up. Everybody has to draw on their own map the road that the card tells in, and we're all trying to make paths to connect castles and collect fruit, if I recall correctly. Trails of Tucana is the same basic kind of idea, except every round we're drawing 2 cards that represent 2 different landscapes. So if you draw a mountain and a river and a lake, that means somewhere on my hex map, one of the many places where a mountain and a lake are adjacent to each other, I have to draw a road connecting them. So like Avenue, we're trying to make long, unbroken roads to connect these villages and make sure the line, the roads that we're going pass over stuff, so we score bonus points and stuff like that. But now there's a lot more unpredictability as to what we're going to draw, because you could really count cards in Avenue because it was just a single deck. You know what was coming. Now it's you have to be much more tactical and responsive, and it's almost as good as Avenue, which is to say it is excellent. Jen, I liked it a lot. You'll see more about it soon. Trails of Tucana. High Rise is an excellent city building game that its main claim to fame is that it is a time track game, which is to say it is a game where players' markers are all on a time track, and whoever is furthest behind on the time track, it's that player's turn. They can go as far forward on the time track as they want, and wherever they land, they will do that action. So they could just go a few steps up, or they could travel halfway around the board, so that if they need to get to something that's really important to them. But then they can't go again until they're at the end of the line. This is a brilliant mechanism. It's been in a lot of games. It's always good. But there are problems sometimes when you see time tracks in games where the game doesn't incentivize players enough to make the really big jumps so that other players get a lot of intermittent turns. High Rise is a time track game, and I think they probably do time tracks smarter than any other game has ever done it. And if you want to know how, you can go watch the video I did for it when it was on Kickstarter earlier this year. Suffice to say, it's a really sharp SimCity real estate mogul style building game with tons of setup variability because all the different buildings types of buildings that can get built can really change the game up from game to game. And the most important thing, that time track, it's the best time track ever. So I highly recommend it from Gil Hova, the designer of the networks. So, High Rise, great stuff. It was also in my top 20 when I appeared on Edward's show. So that tells you how much I love it. Carousel is an interesting game in that it is a tile laying game, but the tiles we're laying are the horses and elephants and unicorns and whatever else that you would put onto a carousel. The board is the carousel, and as you might imagine, like a carousel, the board rotates. So on my turn, I'll lay some tiles down into the section of the carousel that's in front of me, and then after everybody's turn is over, everybody does that with the section of the carousel in front of them, the whole board rotates 90 degrees, and now I'm putting tiles in a completely different section. And I am trying to do this I'm now putting my tiles in the same section that you put your tiles in on a previous section. And that sounds really cool and fun and puzzly. Tom Vassell, Dice Tower, did a video of it a couple of weeks ago because he got an advanced copy, and he thought that it was too puzzly and that it should have been lighter because of the theme, I guess. And he couldn't really articulate why he thought it was too puzzly, but a game that Tom Vassell thinks is too puzzly, that goes high on my list of a game I want to try because I like puzzly. So Carousel sounds very intriguing, and I can't wait to try it. After that, we've got PAX Transhumanity. This one made it on my list because Edward of Heavy Cardboard convinced me in the podcast that I should check it out. It is the latest Eklund game, which is to say, it's not Phil Eklund, who has done a few games I've covered. Oh, but my brain is just shutting down completely. High Frontier and... I can't think of all his games. But anyway, the games from the Eklunds are known for being super complex, super dense, and having some of the worst rule books in all of board gaming. And I've tried to cover two of his games in the past, and both of them almost completely broke me. So I was prepared to completely dismiss this one, the latest one from the Eklund family, out of hand. But Edward convinced me it's worth checking out. Because, it's from Matt, and he does less complex stuff than Phil. He's the son, Phil is the father. And they seem to be getting better at their rule book generating. But most importantly, I'm intrigued by this because this is set in a future humanity scenario where nothing bad and apocalyptic comes to pass. Instead, humanity rises up, works together, and uses science to solve all our problems. And since I do tend to think that, current political landscape aside, that is the ultimate future that we will find ourselves in. It is nice to see that kind of positive, upbeat view of the future appear in board games, especially when it comes from someone like the Eklunds, who are known for doing tons of in-depth, deep scientific research into their games, so they have a high level of verisimilitude. So, I'm keen on PAX Transhumanity. I would like to try it out. Burn me once, shame on you. Burn me twice, shame on me. I'm going to try and get burned a third time. I'm going to seek out PAX Transhumanity and see if this is finally the Eklund game for us. And I owe it all to Edward. Or I'll blame Edward, one way or the other. Okay, moving right along at 118 thumbs. We have Yggdrasil Chronicles. And now Yggdrasil is one of the early co-op designer board games. Came out around the same time as Pandemic and Ghost Stories, and made a big splash at the time because, hey, at that point, co-op board games were still a new thing, and Yggdrasil really set a niche for itself out as being much more Euro-y, much less about traveling around in a world and directly fighting stuff, and more about gathering resources and using them. I mean, to this day, it's still a fairly unique design. Even if it is a little outdated now. I finally did get a chance to play it years later, and I thought, wow, this is clever, but it was maybe a little outdated. So I'm very excited to see that the designer has revisited it after, years of development, and he is making a new campaign, narrative-driven version of it, where we will get to play through multiple instances, the Yggdrasil Chronicles. And like I said, the original game was good, and I can see how it could be amazing. And the designer, Cedric Lefebvre, I'm sorry, Cedric. That's a hard name. It's got V's in weird places. He has since gone on to do Shiteno, which was an excellent little I Split You Choose game, and more recently Spacegate Odyssey, which was a super smart, very clever worker placement game. So he is definitely on the rise. So I am definitely interested in seeing what he does when he revisits his old baby and gives it a new fresh coat of paint with Yggdrasil Chronicles. Then we've got Razzia, which is interesting to me because it's from designer Sophia Wagner, who last year had the fantastic Boldest, which was a very sharp game, and then 2 years ago had another game which I thought was very clever but was terrible for 2 players, and I can't remember the name of it now, but it was another building floating cities in the sky type game. But anyway, so she's had a fantastic game and a very good game that just didn't work that well for 2. And so this is her 3rd game. Or no, it's actually her 4th because I totally missed her 3rd one. No, somebody else did that one. No, I think this is her 3rd published game. And what is it? It's a dice worker placement game, I believe. Yeah. Where the dice are the mice, I think, that we're trying to scatter around to catch food in a kitchen. I like that. I liked Ratatouille. Ratatouille, the dice game? Yes, please, from Sophia Wagner. Because again, the Boldest was fantastic last year. Okay, that's good enough for me. I'm down to check out Razzia. Then we've got Little Town, which had the unfortunate timing to come out shortly after... now I can think of as Little Town. Oh, what's the name of the game that is definitely going to be in my top 10 of the year? Oh, man. Oh, I am just shutting down completely now. And I can't... Oh! Little Village? Oh, man. Oh, this is driving me nuts. It was from AEG. I can remember playing it. I played it with knights around a table. I can remember everything about this game except for the frickin' name. All right, let's just go look it up because I'm literally melting down in front of you, folks. What are we at now? 2 hours and 16 minutes. I think I've gone past my expiration date, but I will look up this name, and it's not going to drive me nuts any longer. Games that came out in 2019. Tiny Towns! Tiny Towns. Tiny Towns, I'm telling you right now, is going to be in my top 10 games of the year. It's an incredibly sharp, fun, little, fast city building game. And everybody loved it. It made a huge splash when it came out around Gen Con time. Lesser known was Little Town, a game with almost the exact same title, which is also about building little towns instead of tiny towns. And it's a shame because it looks really good too. It is a worker placement game where I put my worker out on the board, and that means I don't activate the spot I'm on, but I activate all the spots adjacent to that, and that's how I gather the resources to be able to build buildings. And once buildings have been built, when you send workers out, you put them adjacent to those buildings, you'll activate those buildings, and you can activate your opponent's buildings, your own buildings. It looks really cool and very clever, and I'm afraid it will completely be forgotten in the shadow of Tiny Towns, because 2 games that on the surface look very, very similar with almost exactly the same title, and one of them came out first and had a huge splash. So my fingers are crossed for Little Towns. Big shout out to it. I would love to give it a try. Little Town. Then we've got The Quest for El Dorado, The Golden Temples. Quest for El Dorado was a deck building game from Reiner Knizia. It was his first deck building game, and it was fantastic. Absolutely phenomenal game. One of the best deck builders ever, I think. If I were to I would probably make my top 10 tech building games. And it's getting a sequel now, which can be standalone or combined with the original. And the interesting thing is, the original game was just traipsing through the jungle to get to the city of El Dorado. Apparently now, new tiles are added that have us traipsing through El Dorado itself, because we've actually made it to El Dorado, but we're still doing the same deck building approach to traveling through the world. I mean, I cannot stress enough just how great the Quest for El Dorado is. And the only thing it was missing was more cards. Every deck builder is always going to need more cards. Here come the new cards, but not just new cards. New tiles, new environments to travel through. Way to go, Reiner Knizia. You are doing deck builders right with the Quest for El Dorado, the Golden Temples. Then we've got Key Market, 2nd edition. I ran through Key Market many moons ago. It is a great Euro economic stock market game, and all about harvesting resources with a very, very cool and unique worker placement mechanism. And then those goods change in value based on prevailing economic trends, and it was super sharp. Go watch my run through to find out why. It has been out of print forever. And it's finally getting its 2nd edition. Hooray! And if you want to know the story behind how it got its 2nd edition, you can go listen to Edward's podcast, where I guess appeared, because he played a big part in that. So everybody, a round of applause to Edward for making sure Key Market 2nd edition is finally going to see the light of day. Okay, after that we've got, I forgot the name of this earlier, Pharaon, which is a worker placement game where the center of the board spins. So that means the worker placement cost to be able to do different actions is constantly in flux throughout the game. I mentioned that earlier with the Master Painter game, that it's probably going to be cool there because I saw how cool it was with Pharaon. Pharaon is really cool. I just put a run through up a couple days ago. Go check it out. It's awesome. Yeah. Great worker placement stuff with a neat, cool twist with the spinning board. Pharaon. Then we've got the Deutscher Spielpress Classic Goodie Box, which I do not understand why this is not in expansions. This is going to be a big collection of, probably 5 expansions for different games. Ice Cool, Imhotep, Just One, Leo, Puerto Rico, and Imhotep Duel. Okay, and right. Why do I care about this? Oh, because I honestly thought there were going to be a lot more. I thought this was going to be like, because this is from Frosted Games, and in the past they've done those, I want to say nativity scenes, but that's wrong. Oh man, I can't think of any words anymore. You are literally listening to me melt down here. What are those calendars where you open up stuff in the month of December? What, honey? Advent calendars. Jen heard me from the other side of the house melting down for you folks. In the past, they've done these Advent calendars. I covered the first one ever. It was a lot of fun. And they came with 24 promos. I figured this one was going to be 24 promos, but it looks like it's just 5, and they're all for games I don't care about. I mean, Puerto Rico, that's pretty cool. Imhotep Duel, that's nice. But okay, well, if you have Ice Cool, Imhotep, Just One, Leo, Puerto Rico, or Imhotep Duel, you'll want to seek this out because this will be how you get those particular bonuses. I'm a little surprised, though, now that I actually look at the list. I thought there'd be more. Walking in Burano. That's it. I talked about it earlier. I couldn't remember if it was Burano or Murano. It's Burano. And even though it came out at Essen last year, it is listed for this year again because it has been picked up by a different publisher. AEG is doing a big reprint of it that adds, I forget, like an additional 5 character types, which is a pretty big deal. So if you picked it up last year and you're wondering, well, hey, how do I just get those character types? That's not fair. Go talk to AEG because hopefully you won't have to buy the whole game all over again. But if you didn't pick it up last year, as I said earlier, the Walking In series I think is going to become one of Jen's and my favorites because Walking in Burano is fantastic. If you want to know why, go check out my run-through. Alrighty, Save the Meeples is a very interesting worker placement game where we are using meeples to do worker placement stuff. Why are we saving the meeples? Because the setting of this game I love. It is basically, there is what's called the Meeple War. Humanity has enslaved meeples to be the engine of their board games. But the meeples are rebelling and trying to escape. And so this game is so meta that you have to imagine the meeples that we're using. I mean, I guess we're as human players, we must be. I think one player represents the humans trying to keep the meeples down so they can't escape. The other player is a human trying to help the meeples escape. And either way, we are using these meeples that are trying to escape from our own table as workers in this worker placement game. I don't know how it works, but I love the idea of it. It is so cool and so clever. It sounds like it is definitely worth checking out. Save the Meeples. Then we've got Detective City of Angels. I covered this last year when it was on Kickstarter. It is an awesome detective film noir Chinatown style, solve a series of mysteries style game. The thing that makes it unique is one of the players' job is to actually kind of be a dungeon master for all the other players who are detectives trying to solve the crime, but they're all competing to be the first because they're all kind of corrupt detectives who can, demand protection money from, speakeasies, and they can, rough up informants and they can bribe people and stuff like that. So that's what all the detectives are doing, trying to solve the crime. But one player is the chisel who is trying to literally decide when to tell the truth and when to lie when the detectives actually interrogate people. It is an awesome game. And, even though I was a year ahead of time telling everybody how awesome it is now, it became out at Gen Con, really. And I think it's been near universal praise. Everybody who's played it has loved it with good reason. It is so clever. Detective City of Angels. You must check it out if you have any interest at all in the subject matter. Then there is Smoothies, which is another roll and write, I think. Let me expand it. It's dice rolling. Doesn't say dice writing, though, so maybe it's just rolling. But anyway, as I recall, we're making smoothies. Yeah, and it is a roll and write game. They just didn't put the mechanism in. Publishers. Anyway, so whatever. Apparently, the notion is all the dice represent the different fruit that go into the smoothies, and you rolling all the dice and building up a big pool that we're going to get the dice out of represents making the smoothie. I don't know. I mentioned earlier, I'm just not that big a fan of making food anymore, but this does sound very charming and bright and colorful. So and I like roll and writes. I'm perpetually enchanted by roll and writes, and this looks really pretty. So I'll give Smoothies a go. After that, we've got Edge of Darkness, which I've talked about at great length. And the important thing about Edge of Darkness, which is the most unique deck builder the industry has ever seen, because you build decks by building cards and then putting them in the deck. That's half of the uniqueness. The other uniqueness is there's just one deck and everybody shares access to it. It is crazy bonkers, off the wall, brilliant in its it's outside of the box approach to these design tropes that we've come to know over the years. And it's just really fun to play, and it's an amazing production. But that's the problem. The production of this game is so over the top that the publisher has said it is too expensive for them to actually sell this via retail channels. So every time I talk about Edge of Darkness, when I'm talking about it in terms of conventions, my point is to remind you that if you do not want to buy it on Kickstarter, you have to buy it at a convention directly from the publisher. So don't think, oh yeah, I've heard a lot of things about it. I'll get it when it's at my friendly local game store, or I'll get it when it's on Amazon. You won't, because it won't be there. So if you're at Essen and if you have any interest in it and you don't want to back it the next time it's on Kickstarter, you should seek it out. Edge of Darkness. And you can watch my run through to know why Jen and I like it so much. Okay. Botanists. Oh, this looks very, very pretty. From a first-time designer, as I recall. There's a field of flowers, and we have meeples that are walking around the flowers collecting them, because we're out amongst the field. But basically the way we collect the flowers, because we're doing set collection to make patterns of flowers and stuff like that, is I have a card, and a card might say, hey, if I'm standing here, get the 3 flowers to the right of me in a straight line, or get an L shape of flowers around me to the south and the west. And so I got to get to the right place to get the right flowers I want, but then I got to play the right card to collect the right flowers. It looks really clever. I think that could be a fun little brain burny type thing. But more importantly, it looks gorgeous. And I think Jen will really just appreciate the walking around, collecting flowers to make your own flower beds. So, first time designer, and AG Games, is that a first-time publisher as well? I'm not quite sure, but it just looks so sweet and charming. If you look at the art, if you look at this box cover, I think you will be compelled to buy it. But it sounds like it has some very clever design elements as well. Okay, that's Botanists. Then, Snowdonia, the Deluxe Master Set. I already talked earlier in this podcast about how amazing Snowdonia is. Nothing has changed that. Snowdonia has had a billion, give or take, little mini promos and mini expansions that have come out over the years ever since it came out. The Deluxe Master Set finally collects all that stuff into one box and releases several new things as well, I think. So, now is your time to get on the Snowdonia train. I'm a little bummed by it because I want the new stuff, but I believe I currently have every original Snowdonia thing that has ever come out. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. I have to look to see if there's a way just to get the new stuff. Or if I got to jettison all my old Snowdonia collection and go with the new one. I don't know. But long story short, I mentioned it earlier. Snowdonia is one of the greatest worker placement games of all time. That is still true. You can watch my run-throughs to find out why. But it's if you want it, now is the time. Get the Deluxe Master Set. Whee! Okay, Porto looks like a very nice, light little tile drafting and laying game. It actually, to be honest, looks a lot like Walking in Burano. A lot like it. The same basic, I'm laying out these tiles to build up very pretty building fronts, and I have to build from the bottom up, and there's rules and restrictions and clever ways to score points and all of that. So I don't know if Porto is going to be better than Walking in Burano, but considering how good Walking in Burano is, a different game, a big box game that does kind of the same thing in a different way is definitely intriguing, and that's why Porto makes my list. Alrighty. And then we've got On the Underground, London, Berlin. I did a run through for this one. It was on Kickstarter. This has been around. It got printed, 12, 13 years ago. And at the time, it was kind of like, if you like Ticket to Ride, but you want something crunchy and brain-burny, try this out. Because it has a lot of the same feel, but it's much, much deeper. And it's been out of print forever. Tom Vassell has been raving about it as one of his favorite. It's been in his top 100 forever. And it's finally available again with a very lavish and deluxe reprint that adds a whole new map. Originally, you could only play the London map. Now you can play London or Berlin. It's very sharp. I regretted having to say it when I did my run-through for it, but Tom was right. It deserves to get reprinted. It deserves all the praise he has lavished on it over the years. And finally, people can pick it up at Essen, On the Underground. Then we've got Era, Medieval Age. This is basically the sequel to Matt Leacock's Roll Through the Ages, Roll Through the Bronze Age. Is that what it's called? Yeah, I believe so. Let me look. Yeah, Roll Through the Ages, Bronze Age. And then he did Iron Age, which I've never actually played. So rather than do another Roll Through the Ages, which was one of the first modern roll-and-writes, really, this has the same basic idea that we're rolling and re-rolling dice to gather resources to build up our ancient civilization. But rather than after the rolling is done, rather than writing down how our civilization is building, we literally build the civilization in front of us, because this game comes with tons of plastic miniature buildings, miniature walls, and every time you play, you're going to make a cool little 3D city that grows up right in front of you, using the same basic mechanisms of what is still one of the greatest roll and writes of all time, Roll Through the Ages. So that's very, very cool. And the interesting thing is, it actually got released at Gen Con, so it's getting a wider release now, or got a pre-release and early release, and people complained rightfully and vociferously about the fact that the board that everybody is building their little mini cities on was really problematic, because the way it was produced, you could not read any of the text on it, and so you had a hard time telling how much of any type of resource do I have. They have now released it. It still has that problematic board, but they have included stickers. So you can put stickers on the board and now read all of the information you need to be able to read. So good on them. And if you already got the early version, don't pick up a new copy of the game. Just pick up some of those sticker packs when you're at Essen. But either way, Roll Through the Ages is fantastic, so I expect Era, Medieval Age will be fantastic too. I worry how much Take That there is in it, because its predecessor, Roll Through the Ages, had a little bit, and it looks like this has more. We'll see. I'm sure we'll get to try. This is my other potential one I might film before Essen launches. I'm really torn between Skytopia, Foothills, Era, Medieval Age, and a few others. But anyway, so it's going to be at Essen. I'm sure it's going to be great, because Matt Leacock, he knows what he's doing. Okay. He designed Pandemic, by the way. Oh, man. I am... 2.5 hours. Why is this killing me? Okay, but we're getting close. We're up to 160 thumbs, folks, for Valley of the Kings, the Premium Edition. And this is like earlier I talked about Dale of Merchants, which is a wonderful deck builder that features deck building and deck deconstruction, and it's come in several small little standalone releases that you can mix and match any way you wanted over the years, and now it's getting a big box. Valley of the King is literally the exact same story. Deck building, deck deconstruction, 3 little individual things that are now finally collected into one deluxe reprint package that also adds some new stuff that wasn't available before. I have covered the Valley of the King games of old. They are great deck builders. The only problem with them was they had way too much take that in it for Jens and my taste. Although, as more expansions came out, you could mix and match to avoid the take that. Now, it's much easier to mix and match because it's all in one box with nice setup guides for being able to mix and match things and make Care Bear friendly games and all the rest of it. So I'm very, very happy that Valley of the Kings is getting the deluxe lavish attention it should have gotten all these years, because it is an excellent deck builder. Valley of the Kings. Oh, next up. This is an interesting one. Marco Polo 2 in Auftrag des Cons, which I think means Road to the Cons, or something like that. What is an Auftrag? Oh, I don't remember. But anyway, it's been many, many years since high school in German, and my high school level German will not let me remember what Auftrag means. And I'm not going to look it up because I just need to keep moving forward. Alrighty. Marco Polo 2. It's a sequel. And here's the interesting thing. It's a sequel in the same way that Ticket to Ride Europe is a sequel to Ticket to Ride, which is to say it's the exact same game with a different map and some of the rules changed and tweaked. And I believe that's what's happening here. This could have been an expansion to regular Marco Polo, but it is a standalone game. But you're still using dice to travel back and forth on I think this game, now the game is focusing less on traveling from Europe to the Far East along the Silk Road. This game, thematically, focuses more on traveling back. That's a cool thematic idea, but apparently the core gameplay is still going to be largely the same, with just new special powers, new characters, and a new map to travel. So that's cool. I like the description. Retread old paths with renewed purpose, or find new ones as you explore farther west. So that's cool. And Marco Polo is fantastic. So Marco Polo 2 should be fantastic as well. And I'm surprised Yukon Airways gets 170 as opposed to 168. But anyway, I'm not quite sure why, but Yukon Airways, well, I covered it last month. This is a great dice drafting game. I talked in the top 10, a million years ago it feels like now, about how Paris, New Eden, did this fantastic dice drafting approach where the dice aren't in one pool, they're in a bunch of different pools, and depending on what pool you pool from, you get different effects when you're trying to draft the dice you need, and I thought that was brilliant in Paris, New Eden. Yukon Airways does the exact same thing, does it in a different way, but it's the same basic idea, and it's brilliant here as well. So, do you get Paris, New Eden, or Yukon Airways? Well, Yukon Airways does it, and it's all in the service of a pick-up and deliver game as you're trying to fly passengers around the Yukon and deliver them to their final destinations. And New Eden we're doing it to actually build a New Eden, build up settlements. For me and Jen, we prefer building things rather than delivering things. So Paris, New Eden was the better way to go. If you love pick up and deliver though, you owe it to yourself to check out Yukon Airways though, because it's an excellent pick up and deliver. And the dice drafting is phenomenal. Okay, Sanctum. This one did not make my top 20, but I thought about it long and hard. It is from CGE, and it is basically attempting, and I don't think they mince words about this. They come right out and say, look, we're trying to recreate the feeling that Diablo, the classic computer game, gives you in board game form. It's a lootathon where you just go in and kill tons of monsters to get better weapons, to kill tougher monsters to get better weapons. And that's cool. It's a competitive game instead of cooperative, unlike Diablo, so that's a little bit of a change. But I don't believe the developers actually mentioned Diablo specifically, but they do say they're trying to capture video game feel. With cool miniatures and, fast playing, dice rolling, press your luck, and all the rest of it. I suspect it will be great, because Czech Games Edition, the people behind everything Vlaada Chvátil's ever done. It's Vlaada Chvátil's company, basically, I think. And more recently, Codename. Czech Games Edition can do no wrong. So I expect Sanctum will be fantastic. I just haven't looked into it yet. Because it's one of those ones where I felt like I didn't need to. Yes, of course I will check it out, because, hey, I love Diablo back in the day, and I love CGE games. So bring on Sanctum, I say. Okay. Here's another game I'm thinking I might be the one I film tomorrow, depending on how much time I've got before Essen, because I got to get one more game filmed. It might be Cities Skylines. And I talked about this earlier with, was it Sprawlopolis? The idea of a cooperative city building game is very engaging to me. And that's what Cities Skylines does. Apparently, Cities Skylines is actually based on a very popular SimCity-esque video game, which I've never played, so I don't know anything about it. So I expect it'll get a lot of attention just because people love the video game so terribly much. I don't care about that. I just care about doing SimCity-style board gaming where I'm working with Jen instead of against her. I also care, by the way, that this one is designed by Rustin Hackinson, who is the designer of one of my top 10 games of all times, Nations. So boom, that is a 1-2 punch that makes Cities Skylines a must play for me. And apparently I'm not alone because I'm in the upper echelons of games now at 173 thumbs. Okay, and then we move on to 175 thumbs for Parks, which, oh man, I don't know much about it, but Stephanie Hodge, a Board Game Geek, when I did my guest appearance on the Board Game Geek show a few months ago, she'd played an early advanced copy of it, and she was raving about it. Absolutely raving about it. If I recall correctly, this is another time track game, which I talked about earlier as one of my favorite gameplay mechanisms. So I'm always keen on seeing how they do it. And this one, apparently, the interesting thing is on the time track, each player has 2 markers instead of 1. And that's interesting. That's intriguing. I'd like to see how that works. But apparently, the main claim to fame for this game is a lot of people are saying it should win Best Art of the Year because the art is just so gobsmackingly gorgeous, which Steph certainly agreed with as well when she was talking about it. So it's been high on my list ever since, and it will be at Essen. Parks. Then we've got Circadians, First Light, which is an excellent dice worker placement game from Sam McDonald, who is the designer, or the lead designer, I should say, on Architects of the West Kingdom and Paladins of the West Kingdom. I'm really kind of surprised this isn't a West Kingdom game. This is a game where we are basically not conquering an alien planet in the far future, but instead are working with the indigenous peoples of this faraway planet and, providing them what they need so they can help us with what we need. And it's really good. I just put my run through up a couple days ago. Very, very sharp worker placement because it's dice worker placement and simultaneous action selection. Or not quite, but kind of. It's really fresh and it's a lot of fun. And Jen and I both like it a lot. And you can see why in my run through. And it will be at Essen. And it's from the designer of the West Kingdom series. And again, I don't know why they didn't slap the West Kingdom name on it, because they could have. But anyway, it's great. Circadians, First Light. The Magnificent is another dice drafting game, and this is from the design team behind Santa Maria and Avenue and Trails of Tucana. Elif Svensson and Christian Osby. These two guys, they make great, beautiful games together. And I did do a run-through of Magnificent last week. It is magnificent. I think it's fair to say that. It's certainly on the heavier side. And it's very, very clever dice drafting game about building up and performing a traveling circus. It has a really unique look. It looks quite unlike any other game ever. It basically looks like a dark mode of your phone apps because the entire board is black and there's just highlights of color and it's very stark and beautiful. And then but it's not going to be for everybody, but the gameplay should be. It's a very sharp, fun Euro, and if you want to see how it plays, check out my run through. I need to say that more because I'm running out of steam for the Magnificent. Then we've got Paris, City of Lights, and this is another one that Tom Vassal, Z Garcia of the Dice Tower covered. And his video convinced me I must check this out. Because a couple of months ago, or a month ago, I did a run-through for the Grand Carnival. And I said at the time, oh my gosh, this is such an amazing game because it's a double-layer tile laying game. You use Tetris pieces to lay down the ground floor of the You make the ground floor by laying down Carcassonne pieces that create patterns that create Tetris-shaped patterns. Then, as a second step, the Tetris-shaped patterns represent buildings you can put on this foundation that you build. And it was super smart. I was very impressed by it. And so, imagine my surprise when I found out Paris, City of Lights, does a very, very similar thing, but with even cooler game components. So, I like the idea of double-decker tiling, because tiling is, again, another one of my favorite gameplay mechanisms. You can tell, because you can go back and watch my top 10 gameplay mechanisms of all time, where I definitely said dice drafting is my favorite and tiling is one of my favorites. So anyway, this looks like a gorgeous game. Z Garcia really raved about it, and while I haven't played it, I know the idea is solid because I played Grand Carnival. And so that's why I am keen on Paris, City of Lights. Then we've got Babylonia. This is the latest, this is the first big box game from Reiner Knizia in a while. Although, I don't know how big box it is. It looks very, very similar in feel. Maybe not in gameplay, but in feel to like one of his older abstract classics like Through the Desert. Because it looks like it's a game where we are grabbing land as fast as we can with cool little pieces to try and score lots of points. I don't know much more about it, but Reiner Knizia, if there's a designer out there that has earned, through his insanely powerful pedigree, the mantle of will check it out without having to learn anything about it, it's Reiner Knizia. So yes, Babylonia, definitely check it out. And that was 196 thumbs. We've crossed 200 thumbs. 202 thumbs specifically for the game. So, you've been eaten. I'm really keen on trying this. I worry I won't like it because it is a solo or a two-player game where one player, or you if you're playing solo, is a space miner who has been eaten by a space worm. But he wants to be eaten by the space worm because he mines all his space crystals in the space worm belly. So, everything is going according to plan. And what he has to do is, he has to mine all of the whatever it is he finds in this space worm before he gets pooped out, before he gets digested. Or, either pooped out or digested. So that's really, really cool. But here's the deal. The other player, or you, if you're playing solo, is the space worm itself. And you are trying as best you can to actually dissolve this irritant that is in your belly. That sounds so cool. The art is from Kwanchai Moria. It looks really beautiful. Obviously, the subject matter is great. It's from designer Scott Olms, who has a very, Mr. Tiny Epic, so it has a very good pedigree. And yeah, this should be really great. My only concern is, it is a dueling style game, and I do wonder if Jen and I won't enjoy, at odds with each other, but it sounds so funny and so charming. We got to give it a try anyway. That's So You've Been Eaten, or So You've Been Eaten, because there's a comma in there. Okay, then we move on to 209 thumbs with Brussels 1897, which they totally should have called Brussels 1893, the card game, to avoid confusion, because this is totally confusing. People wonder, why is there another Brussels game? This is from the same designer. It is the card game version of the previous one. They just named it wrong. And I recently did a run-through for it, and it is every bit as good as its big brother. For my taste, it might even be better. And that's saying something, because Brussels made my original top 10 worker placement games of all time. What makes it so special, in case you haven't watched my video, is every round you have the cards are the worker placement board, but they are also your workers, so it's a really clever. But when you place a worker, you're not just trying to do an action like a regular worker placement game. You are also engaging in an auction, and at the same time, you are engaging in an area control battle. So every worker has 3 different things that it is trying to achieve for you, and that makes the decision making in 1893 and now 1897 top-notch, really great stuff. And yeah, it'll be there, and I highly recommend it. But don't take my word for it. Watch the run-through and decide for yourself for Brussels 1897. Then, 210 thumbs for Lavinia. And I cannot, for the life of me, remember why I put this on the list. Originally, I had it as not interested. But a few weeks ago, I went on the Weekly Alaboom, which is a show I sometimes do a live appearance on YouTube. Every Wednesday night they go on. And a couple of weeks ago I was on and we were doing an Essen preview show. And somebody convinced me at the time that Lavinia, which is a card drafting, grape picking, wine making game, that Lavinia had to go on my list. And they made a strong argument for it, and I do not remember what that argument is anymore. I mean, at first glance, it looks like a clever little dice drafting game. I know, what's it? Z Garcia of the Dice Tower reviewed it a couple of months ago, and he gave it high marks. So there's that. And somebody told me it was really great on Alaboom. And so I said, okay, fine. It looks pretty. I'm not particularly interested in making wine for the reasons I've talked about several times now, but still, I'll give it a go for Lavinia. Then, okay, I do know about this one. Rune stones. It feels like a lifetime ago in this podcast. I talked a bit about how amazing Rudiger Dorn is as one of the preeminent designers of all time, and he deserves that every step of the way. And Runestone only adds to his pedigree. It is his first deck building game, and it is a amazing, one of the most unique deck building games that have come out in quite a while. Because, well, it's another one of these ones where you're building your deck up, but just as fast almost, you are tearing your deck apart. But this game takes both of those ideas to an 11. You build your deck faster in this game than any other one, and you rip it apart against your will. That's the thing. Most, I talked about Dale of Merchants. I talked about Valley of the Kings. As you have the choice to rip cards out of your deck to score them for points. In this game, the game is forcing you to make tough choices every single turn about the cards that you will have to jettison. And it will be painful, but you will have to keep making these tough trade-off choices as you try to make powerful runestones. It's good stuff. Check out my run-through when it was on Kickstarter a few months ago. Runestones. Rudiger Dorn. Okay, next up we've got Ishtar, Gardens of Babylon, the latest from Bruno Cathala, and he is teaming up with another designer, Evan Singh, who I do not know. I'm going to look him up, and this is his, so it was probably really Evan's design and Bruno is helping him, since that's probably the way these things normally work. But anyway, this is a game of bringing flowers to the desert. I don't know much about it. I've heard lots of good things about it. Bruno Cathala has always been kind of hit or miss with me, so I don't really know how well it's going to work out. But I have high hopes for it. And, oh my gosh, I just closed the page. Why did I just close the page? Oh my goodness gracious. And now I've reopened the page and, everything was just lost. Oh my gosh, why are you not showing anything now? Oh dear. Oh my goodness. And that's going to change all the thumbs, so now things are going to be out of order. Oh, folks. Why do you do this to me? Remember last month? I was talking about how, do you guys really need me to do this again? Because it's freaking hard. And I just got completely inundated with, yes, Rahdo, you must do it. It is the most important thing in the universe to us. And here I am doing it. And I am regretting asking. I just should have said, folks, I'm not doing it this year because I don't know if I can do this again next year. Anyway, okay, we're back open again. Sorry, that was an aside. Ishtar. That really sucks, though. The things are going to be out of order now in my show notes. Oh, well, c'est la vie. C'est la vie. I don't have anything to say about Ishtar. It's from Bruno Cathala. Supposedly it's very good. Let's move on to something I do know about. The next one is Masters of Renaissance, Lorenzo Il Magnifico, the card game. And it's ironic. I mentioned a bit ago, they should have called Brussels 1897. They should have called it 1893 the card game. They shouldn't have done it here. Because while ostensibly on the surface, this is the card game version of Lorenzo Il Magnifico, it is not. It is in name only. This game is so different than Lorenzo. It does not. Normally, the card game means it will capture the essence and just simplify and streamline the core gameplay of its big brother. That's certainly what the Brussels card game does. This Lorenzo Il Magnifico, the card game, does not recreate. It is a totally new and unique beast. Only on the barest surface does it feel like Lorenzo. So, anyway, I think that was poorly named, which is why I'm just from now on going to refer to it as Masters of Renaissance and leave the Lorenzo out of it. Masters of Renaissance. What's that all about, you might be asking? Well, it's a sequel to Lorenzo Il Magnifico, not a remake of it. And it's really, really clever. On the surface, it is just a draft cards to create an engine that will allow you to use your resources to convert them into other resources and points. That's basically what it is. It does a very good job of that. But the core thing is how you get your resources, not the cards. You get them from the market, and the market is this cool little 3x4 grid of marbles on a special little tray. And what you do is you pick a row or column of marbles and say, I'm going to get all of those resources. I'm going to get 2 stone and some military strength and a little bit of influence with the church, because it's 2 gray marbles and a blue marble and a red marble. Then there's an extra marble. After you collect all your resources, you shove that marble into that line, and that completely changes the entire layout of the grid. And another marble gets shoved out. This is very much the same idea as Ulm, which was a top 10 Euro game I covered a few months ago, or a few years ago. And it worked brilliantly there. It works brilliantly here. Jen and I were very enamored of this core gameplay mechanism. It's just fun. It has a great toy factor to it, a wonderful tactile feel, and then the engine building and goods conversion stuff is really sharp as well. So, don't be fooled. This is not Lorenzo il Magnifico, the card game, but it is still something very special. Masters of Renaissance. Then we've got Ragusa. I talked about this a while ago in Tiny Towns, except it's not a small town. Was it whatever the not Tiny Town game was? This cool idea of a worker placement game where when I put the worker down, I don't activate the space, I activate all the spaces around him. That game does it, and so does Ragusa, and Ragusa is brilliant at it. I did a run through last month. You can see why. Jen and I were super duper impressed by it. And I just think it's a really great twist on worker placement. Check out my run through to find out more. I'm glad to see it's ranking so high here at 245 thumbs. It deserves it, Ragusa. 248 thumbs, though, brings us Orleans Stories. And now, this is not... At first, I thought this was going to be some kind of big campaign version of Orleans. It's not. It's Orleans with a new board and 2 new... what would you call them? Missions. In the same way that the Orleans co-op expansion basically gave you a new mission to play that kept the core game, but just gave you like different objectives and things you were trying to do. That's what Orleans Story does as well. It comes with 2 new stories you can play that keeps the core gameplay alive, but First Kingdom and King's Favor gives you radically different goals you're trying to achieve over the course of the game. I love Orleans, so I love seeing this. I do wonder, why is it its own separate standalone game? Why isn't it just an expansion for Orleans? I do wonder about that. Because it's a bummer that it means I won't be able to take the new stuff and, retroactively put it back in the old Orleans. It's strange, but I'm definitely curious to find out more about it and why did they go this way instead of making an expansion. I don't know. But Orleans Stories, I'm sure it will be fantastic. Then, Netta Tonka, which again, I covered when it was on Kickstarter a year ago, so you can go check out that run through. I think this is very reasonable to have it rated so high at 255 thumbs because it is a sharp worker placement game that is basically replicating life in an indigenous tribe community lifestyle thing. No particular tribe. They kind of just did an amalgamation of different tribes from the Americas and actually from, as I understand it, Siberia. But anyway, the core gameplay is that it mixes worker placement with area control, because if I place 2 workers adjacent to each other on the board, I will get to activate a third bonus action that is between them. And those bonus actions, grabbing them, is key to victory. So if I put my first worker down, players figure I'm probably going to put my next worker adjacent to the first one so I can get that extra bonus, which means other players are going to want to do that to block me. But then that's stopping them from getting their own bonuses. And balancing all of that is very tricky. And the game is gorgeous as well. So Netta Tonka has got it going on big time. After that, we jump from 255 to 312 thumbs. Oh, now the thumbs are really picking up. Clank Legacy Acquisitions Incorporated. Jen and I have already played through the entire campaign. I gave a very long final thoughts about it. Suffice to say, Clank and Legacy are 2 great tastes that taste great together, but do understand, while you're going through the campaign, the Legacy campaign for Clank, it will radically alter the core Clank feel. And I think in a way that kind of weakens Clank a little bit. But still, I didn't mind because the Legacy stuff was so cool and so engaging and so entertaining that even if the core Clank formula was weakened a bit, it was worth it to experience it all. And then the beautiful thing is, once you're done, you have your own custom Clank board that you can continue to play and mix and match with the other expansions. So that's all awesome for Clank Legacy Acquisitions Incorporated. Then, Machikoro Legacy, which I feel like I should have played by now because I know it came out at Gen Con, but the publisher never sent me a review copy, so that's okay. I didn't have time to cover it anyway. But I'd like to because Rob Davio, Mr. Legacy himself, has contributed to the design. And while the original Machikoro I thought was very clever, it was still a total pass for me and Jen. We ultimately felt it was a great idea that was kind of poorly implemented, which is why you've never seen me do a run-through for it, because I don't cover games I don't like, or that I don't think are good. But like I said, the core idea of Machikoro could have been great, and other games have come along and done it right, like Space Base and Balearica, Card Kingdoms. So I expect this new version of Machikoro will be doing it right. And with Rob Davio on board, it'll probably do some very cool Legacy stuff as well. So I'm definitely keen on checking out Machikoro Legacy. Then, now this is the weirdest one on the entire list. Ratville somehow is in the upper echelons of hotness with 333 thumbs. More thumbs than anything else I've talked about. Even though I think this is first-time designer Pau Carls and Sergio Vaquero. No, they've done a couple of Versailles and Yinlis. So one of them is a first-time designer. One has a very limited design pedigree of games I've never played. I've never heard of the publisher either. And there's very little description of what the core gameplay is. So I don't know how this game is one of the hottest games of the show, but Ratville certainly is. And unfortunately, there's nothing in the description that gives you any idea what it's about. Let's see, I'm trying to remember. What was it that makes this game interesting? Oh, right. Every shift should be chosen from, leader... A community of survivors who survive in the sewers. We're rats living in a sewer. Each shift should be chosen from among the most qualified people in the community to provide their own with the resources necessary for subsistence. The player who gets the community to thrive and grow faster will be the winner. Mixes cards, dice, resource management, and development of community and confronting terrifying creatures. Okay, I don't know. You tell me, folks. Somebody... pick this game up at Essen and tell me why it's such a big deal. I suspect I'm just missing something, but I don't know what. But that's why I made it interesting, because it has so many crazy thumbs for Ratville. Okay, next one at 348 thumbs. I know why this is here. Suburbia, the Collector's Edition. Suburbia is fantastic. It used to be my favorite SimCity game. It's definitely fallen a little bit because so many other games have really raised the ante, but it's still an amazing title. And this Collector's Edition... it is gorgeous. It is, man. Publisher, Publisher Bezier Games has pulled out all the stops, made an absolutely gobsmacking, overproduced game. And for people who love it, and maybe haven't gotten all the expansions or would like to get some new stuff, was it with these collector's editions that release new stuff that now I got to buy the collector's edition when it drives me nuts. But anyway... yeah, Suburbia Collector's Edition seems to be doing that as well. Hopefully for folks like me who have everything except for the new stuff, you can still get the new stuff without getting the whole expansion. I don't know. We'll see. But Suburbia is great, and it's nice to see a big Super Deluxe Edition. After that, tied at 348 thumbs, there is Deep Blue, which is a very, very cool push-your-luck deck-building game from Days of Wonder. And this game is fantastic. This could potentially have made it into my top 10 of the year, I think, because the approach to Push Your Luck is so fresh and so original and so out of the box and so atmospheric. This game obliterates last year's critical darling Quacks of Quedlinburg, which was a nice Push Your Luck game, but it's nothing compared to Deep Blue, because while there's a lot of cool things Deep Blue does, the central thing that really makes it special, and you can watch my run through to see more of this, is when I start pushing my luck by doing a deep sea dive to find treasure, other players who are nearby can choose to jump into my dive and then ride on my coattails. And that changes everything, and it creates so much tension and drama like Push Your Luck has never seen before. It's amazing. The only reason it wouldn't make my top 10 of the year is because I think they did a relatively poor job with two-player scaling. The board should have been two-sided. The back side of the board should have had a tighter map with fewer locations, because in a two-player game, a lot of the opportunity to piggyback off with another player can be lost because the board is so big, and with only one other player, there's just not as many people in the same area as me. And that's a real crying shame, because otherwise the game is brilliant bonkers. And I highly recommend it for higher player count. Deep Blue. Okay, then we've got Alubari, A Nice Cup of Tea. I feel kind of like this is the Snowdonia podcast because I just keep coming back to it, but I have to, because Alubari is the spiritual sequel to Snowdonia. In fact, I think it has a subtitle, A Snowdonia Game. Rather than building a rail line through the mountains of Wales, we're building a rail line through the mountains of India. And a lot of the core worker placement gameplay is still here. As I understand it, there are several tweaks and adjustments and changes. I don't even know what they are. I don't need to know. A new shiny version of Snowdonia. Hey, that's A-okay in my book. It's interesting. Did I mention that the top 20 I did, or the top 10 I did on heavy cardboard has changed? Because it's been 2 weeks since I've done it and stuff has shifted around. Alubari was in my top 10. It's not in my top 10 now because Foothills, the other Snowdonia-inspired game, pushed its way in, and it kind of pushed Alubari out. But it doesn't push Alubari out of my heart. This is still a must-have game for me. It's just now it's a top 20 game instead of a top 10 game, and I cannot wait to see how Snowdonia has evolved over the years, because Foothills was amazing. So I expect Alubari, also taking new, interesting twist of Snowdonia, should be amazing as well. Okay, then we got Sierra West. I talked at length about Johnny Pack earlier with Coloma and Fistful of Meeples, and this was the third game in his American West Euro-style trilogy, and I've already done a run-through for it, and it's fantastic. An incredibly clever, sharp game, tons of replayability. Watch my run-through. It's kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's an action programming game, kind of, sort of. It defies description. You have to see it to believe it. It's so clever, it's so sharp, and it definitely deserves to be up in this upper echelon at 358 thumbs, Sierra West. Then, oh folks, I can feel we're getting close to the end, but we now have to move on to 1987, Channel Tunnel. And now this is interesting. This is the sequel to 1906 San Francisco, which I did a run-through for. That was a neat little, a lot of game in a tiny little box worker placement game about rebuilding San Francisco after the Great Quake in 1906. This game is a worker placement game as well, and it comes in the same tiny little super portable box, and I suspect it's going to be another big game in a tiny box experience, but as I understand it, it's a very different style of game, because now, rather than rebuilding San Francisco, it's the year 1987 instead of 1906, and we're building the Channel Tunnel, the rail line that connects under the ocean, England and Europe, the European continent. And that is super cool. I have been through the channel several times myself in real life. Always got a kick out of it. I love the idea of being contributing to the idea of building it. It's very, very cool because in real life, the channel was begun working in England and in France, and there were two teams drilling towards each other. And this idea is just fascinating to me, that the engineers had to get it right so that these two teams working in different parts of the world have to make sure everything comes together so that they meet in the middle at the bottom of the ocean. That's amazing to me. This incredible feat of modern engineering that finished in 1987. And so now we get to live it in board game form, and I'm very, very excited about that, especially because 1906 San Francisco was excellent. Now, it's not on my list, but I should mention there is a third game in this series of games from publisher from Looping Games. They've got... what is it? So the 1906 San Francisco, 1987 Channel Tunnel, and 1942 USS Yorktown. And that one, while it's not officially on my list, I'm just going to give it a shout out anyway because I love the idea of this one. That one is a cooperative World War II Pacific Air Theater simulation, where players are working cooperatively, trying to push back the Japanese fighter squadron advancement. And we're basically based out. I mean, it's basically a war game between aircraft carriers that are launching squadrons of fighters and stuff like that. So it's a shame. I'm really intrigued by this because I like this whole series of games and the box size and all of that. And I like the idea of a cooperative aerial dogfighting game. But unfortunately, Jen would have zero interest in it. So that's why 1942 USS Yorktown didn't make my list. But if it was just me, I would totally check that out at the show as well. So anyway, that was that. Then, moving right along to Terra Mara at 388 thumbs. This is a worker placement game. And apparently the interesting thing about it is, as you go forward from round to round to round, more worker placement spaces become unlocked and become available. At the beginning of the game, we have access just to these little group here, but then in round 2, hey, it's those ones and these new ones, and then new ones and new ones. So over the course of the game, more and more worker placement opportunities appear. And here's the interesting thing. When you're in the first round, if you want to, you don't have to be stuck with the worker placement options that are available to you right there. You can skip the queue, pay extra resources, and jump down to the round 2 or the round 3 or the round 4 worker placement spots. But here's the problem. At the end of the round, you won't get those workers back. They will be locked down until you get to round 2 or round 3 or round 4. And I think that's a brilliant idea. I like it a lot. Really clever. This idea of sacrifice to get first access to really important game-changing abilities. But then, now I've lost half my workforce because I've sent them all off effectively into the future. And I won't get them back for a long time. So do I just make do with what I've got, or do I make those sacrifices? I like that idea, so I'm really keen on checking out Terra Mara. Then we have Glenmore 2 Chronicles. I already did a run through for this when it was on Kickstarter. This is brilliant. It adds so much cool new stuff to Glenmore. But at the same time, it takes out and radically changes a couple of core features of Glenmore. So I do think it's fair to call this Glenmore 2, because it is a different beast. It's a very impressive beast. Glenmore is one of the greatest tile line games of all time. And Glenmore 2 could be as well. But I've only seen a little bit of all the modules and expansions, all the Chronicles that come in it. So I cannot wait to check out more of what Glenmore 2 Chronicles has to offer. Then we've got Pret-a-Porter. Now, this is a remake of the excellent worker placement, high fashion agency running game that I did. I think Pret-a-Porter was like the second or third run through I ever did. And ironically, Pret-a-Porter, the second edition, is probably the final run-through I will ever do freehand cam style. So it's kind of like the beginning and end of an era for me that it worked out that way, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, if you watch my show, you know, in the last couple months, I've switched pretty much to full-time static overhead shots, but I'm using a green screen for zooms and stuff like that. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. Just a little personal anecdote. Pret-a-Porter is a brilliant worker placement game. It always has been. The new one has a total and complete makeover. They've tweaked numbers and stuff like that. They have changed a couple of little things for the better, giving players more flexibility and freedom to pursue more variety of agendas and strategies, which is great. It's always been a great game, so it's even better now. It looks better. Definitely worth checking out. Pret-a-Porter, second edition. And then we've got Imperial Settlers, Empires of the North, which I covered months ago, it seems like, and it was definitely at Gen Con, but hey, it's getting its rollout at Essen as well. This is kind of a reimagining of Imperial Settlers, which is one of the biggest Euro hits of the last few years. Monster hit. Everybody loves it to pieces, but Jen and I didn't, because there was a little bit too much head-to-head stealing, destroying, and stuff for our taste. Beautiful thing is, Imperial Settlers, Empires of the North, almost completely eliminates all of that. Certainly eliminates it to where Jen and I don't mind the tiny, tiny bit that remains. And at the same time, it adds very cool new features. A really neat rondelle-style action system that I like a lot. So this has a lot to offer. And Imperial Settlers is going to be launched at Essen, and they'll be getting its first expansion at Essen as well, although I'll talk about expansions in a bit. Okay. Then, Chocolate Factory. I am amazed how high this is, but that's great. This is from Michael Dunstan, Matthew Dunstan, and Brett Gilbert, and another designer, David Digby. And Dunstan and Gilbert, I talked about it before, these guys always get an eyeball from me because of Elysium. And I've already played Chocolate Factory. I did a run through when it was on Kickstarter. This is a very clever engine building game. Because the engine is physically, your board is a conveyor belt that generates boxes of chocolate. And you're constantly modifying your assembly line and upgrading it and trying to make the best chocolates based on a constantly rotating group of employees you could draft for. Super sharp. And, I've been saying before, I'm not really that keen on preparing food. I'll make an exception for a Chocolate Factory. And so Chocolate Factory would be high on my list as well. 413 thumbs. Okay. And finally, the last of it's a collection of a bunch of expansions for a classic game. And unfortunately, throws some new stuff in as well. So if you're like me and you've got all the old stuff, you'll have to toss all that or sell it all somehow to get the new one. It's Castles of Burgundy, the deluxe edition. I don't know what they call. Did they call it deluxe edition or second edition? I'm not quite sure. But this is a reprint, complete and total graphical overhaul of Castles of Burgundy with a collection of all the bajillion little mini expansions that come out over the year and then some new cool sounding stuff on top of it. So, people are really up in arms. A lot of people are very disappointed by the new graphic overhaul. They just wish that the game looked like the old one and it just gotten improved quality components. I don't really have a dog in this fight. I thought the old game looked great. I think the new game looks great. I never had a problem with the old components. I'm sure the new components will be fine. Castles of Burgundy is in my top 10 games of all time. It is the greatest Stefan Feld game of all time. So, hey, more people getting to play Burgundy is a good thing, no matter how you slice it, as far as I'm concerned. In spite of the fact that I just complained a bit about how now I've got to re-get the thing somehow. Or I don't know, maybe I can get them semi-review copy. Fingers crossed, who knows. But let's move on, we're almost done. Trismegistus, the ultimate formula. You'll see a run-through for that going up either today or tomorrow. I'm just waiting for Paulo to check it for goofs. And then everybody can see it. This is definitely the heaviest game on this entire list I have walked you through today. And it'll be one of the heaviest games of the show. This game is up there with Vita Lasarda level weight games. Because like On Mars is going to be there and, and stuff like that. So, Trismegistus is a very interesting dice drafting game from one of the designers of Zolkin the Mayan Calendar and last year's Teotihuacan and several other games, Daniele Tassini, and also he's worked with Federico Pierlorenzi, and it's very, very good. It is, unfortunately, another game about making potions, because we're alchemists trying to transmute materials to do experiments and make potions. So I'm not that crazy about the theme, and I think in the end, it was maybe a little bit too heavy for me and Jen. Maybe. It kind of scratches that upper edge. Like On Mars is not on my list today, even though it's going to be at Essen Spiel, because it's too heavy. It goes beyond Vinhos heavy and Gallerist heavy into the too heavy range. Trismegistus might be too high as well. But don't take my word for it. Watch the run-through. Decide for yourself when it goes live, probably tomorrow. Okay. But I understand totally why it's so high, because it's going to be a big, big hit at show. It's definitely going to be one of those sell out in the first day or two kind of games. I mean, look at it. It's got 436 thumbs. But forget about that. Jumping to 581 thumbs is Paladins of the West Kingdom. And I already talked a bit about designer Sam McDonald. All this was co-designed by Shem Phillips. And he's definitely a designer on the rise. Circadians is great. I did a run-through for Paladins when it was on Kickstarter. It is great. Watch my run-through to find out why. It's really interesting, too. Circadians does some very clever stuff. And Architects of the West Kingdom did some very clever original outside-of-the-box mechanism stuff. Paladins doesn't. Paladins plays it pretty straight. But it is so good. It is such an epitome of perfection. The worker placement with special, distinct worker types, it's absolutely phenomenal. As I recall, my only complaint with it when I covered it on Kickstarter was I was kind of bummed that there was a little bit of randomness. There are, you can use workers to grab certain types of cards, and you don't know what card you'll get until you just draw from a deck. And sometimes cards can be really awesome, and sometimes they can be, wow, that's a piece of crap. And I felt that that was out of place in an otherwise almost flawless game. And I can't wait to see what they did for the final. And but still, I mean, this is going to sell out quick too because Architects is so well loved. It's interesting. I wonder if people will be a little bit disappointed because this is so different from Architects. But it doesn't matter. It's really, really good too. Paladins of the West Kingdom. And my last game at 662 thumbs. Black Angel. And I've already talked about Black Angel. It's probably my game of the year, unless something on the list I just led to you supplants it. There are a few that might supplant it. But currently, Black Angel is amazing. It's effectively the sequel to Troyes. It does many things better than Troyes. It does almost everything differently than Troyes. There are still a few things that Troyes does better. And I know I'm pronouncing Troyes incorrectly. It's very, very hard if you're not French to get that nearly silent R in there. But Black Angel is amazing. I've talked about it at great length. It's a game where we are dice drafting because we are AI running an automated ship full of human DNA with our last hope for humanity trying to reach a new planet light years away. It's deep, it's rich, it's crunchy. There's tons of strategies you can follow. Every time you play, you're going to get different outcomes. It's the bee's knees. It's probably the best game of the year. It's got the most thumbs on this list. And it would have made my top 10 most anticipated games if I hadn't already put it in my top 10 as my number one for Gen Con. And that's it, folks. Where are we at? Over 3 hours now. But we ain't done yet. Hold on, and I'll be right back and try to blitz through some expansions. Sorry, no demos this year. I am tired, as you might have heard. So hang on, we'll be right back. Okie dokie, artichoke, I am back, and I am almost done. Now we just got to get through 22 expansions. And if by now you've already listened to my appearance on Heavy Cardboard, you know I did my top 10 expansions, and I did them as a personal countdown of least anticipated to most anticipated. I'm not doing that here. I have just got 22 to mention, or 22 games specifically. There's actually a couple games that get multiple expansions. And I've just got them again, sorted by hotness, sorted by thumbs. So this is just telling you what the rest of the world values, not necessarily what I value. Again, you can go check out the Heavy Cardboard podcast if you want to know that. And hear me and Edward talk at great length about these, because I am spent, folks. I am going to blitz through this like nobody's blitzness. Are you ready? Then let's go. First up, there is Carcassonne maps. And I chose the Great Britain one, but there are actually several. These are gigantic poster-size posters, basically, that you lay out that are maps of countries, and you play Carcassonne, but you have to adhere to a grid that matches the country. This is a cool idea. Maybe makes regular vanilla Carcassonne as good as Carcassonne the Castle. I don't know, but I'd be curious to try it. Then we've got Railways of Portugal, which I feel like has been covered before. But of all the Railways of the World expansions that have ever come out, this is by far the most intriguing one to me because it's from designer Vital Lacerda. And okay, a Vital game did make it onto this list after all, even though I didn't do On Mars or The Getaway. All right, so yeah, Railways of Portugal must have if you're a Railways of the Will fan. Oh, I'm dying, but we're almost done. I talked about Assembly a lifetime ago, and as I promised, there are a couple of Assembly expansions. They're must get. It's such a charming, sweet little game, and it's just a husband and wife team putting this together. Go meet them if you're at the show. You'll fall in love with these people like I did. They're just so charming, Brits. Alrighty, then we've got Habitats XL expansion. I mentioned the excellent designs of Corn Van Moozel earlier when there was that app, was it Nova, Munda Nova, something like that? Anyway, more Habitats tiles? Yes, please. Habitats is phenomenal. Want to know why? Check out my run-through. And you'll understand why you'll want more tiles. And then we've got Merlin, Knights of the Round Table, which is the second box expansion for Merlin. The first one, Arthur, was fantastic, adding like a second rondel within the first rondel. This one adds the Knights of the Round Table, which, as I understand it, gives you all kinds of unique starting player powers. Always love that. So more Merlin is A-okay by me. Then there's this war of mine, Days of the Siege. So this is interesting. This is I mean, there have been some other expansions, but this is unique in that this war of mine has always been about casting a player in the role of effectively nobodies, just regular civilians stuck in the heart of this war. Apparently, Days of the Siege, it provides new story stuff for you to explore and whatnot. But the interesting thing is, I'm trying to find this here. The role you take on includes stuff that makes you more than just some nameless civilian. You become somebody important because it says you will make choices that affect the future of the city. And that's weird to me, because to me, one of the most striking and powerful things about this war of mine is, no, I'm just trying to survive. Maybe I'll affect my neighbors, but to affect the whole city means I'm becoming a movie star, or the equivalent of a lead character in a movie set in this world. And I don't know if I agree with that. I don't want to rule it out, because this war of mine is brilliant, and I expect this will be brilliant, and it'll be touching and important and impactful, but it does seem to be at odds with the fundamental message, so I'm kind of surprised by that. But I'm intrigued by this war of mine, the Days of Siege. Then there's Edge of Darkness, Sands of Duenstar. I already talked about Edge of Darkness, and that's true here. If you want to get these expansions, unless you're willing to back it on Kickstarter, you got to get it at the show, folks. Which is why, personally, if I were there, it would be the number one thing above anything else I would seek out. Because I'd like to get it in person and not have to, pay shipping charges and all of that, because Kickstarter is always more expensive. Anyway, Runestones, Nocturnal Creatures. I talked earlier about how great Runestones is. It's a deck builder, so more cards to go in your decks is always a good thing. Concordia, Balearica / Cyprus, or Balearica / Italy is interesting, because with last year's release of Concordia Venus, which was a standalone game, now some people have Concordia, which came with the Italy map, and some people have Venus, which came with the Cyprus map. And you think, well, how do I get the other map? This is how you get it. You get Balearica Cyprus or Balearica Italy, and you'll have all the maps again. Brilliant in and of itself, but on top of that, the Balearica map sounds like more than just a new map with a different layout and some little tweaks. It sounds like it's a pretty big addition to the game, almost as big as Salsa, with new types of resources and stuff like that. Very, very interesting. So a definite must-give if you're a Concordia fan. Then there's Pursuit of Happiness Experiences. I don't care what it is. I want more Pursuit of Happiness. Probably the single most charming game I own. A worker placement game where your goal is to live the best life possible. And now the idea of having life experiences, I don't even know what that is. I don't care. It's a must-have. Although, full disclosure, it was designed by a close friend of mine, David Cheerkop. Hey, Dave. Alrighty, congratulations. Alrighty, moving right along. Oh, I should say, since we're doing that, what was it? Post-Human Saga was also designed by friends of mine, since I should have not mentioned that in the main earlier section. But let's continue with Sagrada, the Great Facade's Passion. This is what Sagrada needed to go toe-to-toe with Role Player. It takes Sagrada from a sweet, charming little gateway game into a richer, more robust game, because it adds so much cool stuff. It fixes the solo game, which is great, because the Sagrada solo rules were not the best, and it just adds more cool ideas to an already amazing little dice drafting, die slaying game, Sagrada. Barenpark, the Bad News Bears. This looks very, very cool because it adds monorails. And these monorails are actually little 3D models that you build out of cardboard. I don't know how they affect the gameplay, but I expect the fun factor of building these little monorails that run over your tile laying game, that's going to be awesome. Talk about tiles on tiles. Very, very cool. Barenpark, Bad News Bears. Then Dice Settlers, the Western Sea. Now, sadly, I never actually got a final copy of Dice Settlers, but again, I did think it was a very, very cool game. So cool, it was one of the few games where we would put aside our distaste for the inherent player friction that appears in the game. And now that expansion is coming out for it, well, that's even better. You want to know how great Dice Settler is? Go watch my run-through when it was on Kickstarter last year. Then we've got Everdell, and there are 2 expansions for Everdell coming out. Belfair, and I'm trying to remember what the name of the other one was because I didn't keep it listed, as that was dumb. Spirecrest. Everdell is another insanely charming game. Sweet little worker placement game with very small margins that lead to very big moves and some of the best components the industry has ever seen. So, 2 new expansions? Yes, please. I don't even know what they do. Doesn't matter. They're going to be great. Then, I almost didn't put this on the list, but Newton is getting an expansion. Great discoveries. And I talked earlier when I was talking about the designer Nestor and his predilection towards games that feature baby steps that are kind of a turnoff for Jen. Newton was a great game. I liked it a lot. It was just, this peccadillo of Jen's that kept us away. I'm wondering if great discoveries will allow for bigger, more meaningful, impactful turns as opposed to just lots of tiny little baby step turns. Well, I'd be curious to find out. Alrighty, then there's Santa Maria, the Exploration deck, which is just a tiny little deck of cards that, like the Merlin one I talked about earlier, adds unique player powers. Oh my gosh, I didn't think Santa Maria could get much better, but it sounds like it's going to. Then, there are a boatload of Welcome to expansions, and they're all funky, weird things. The one I highlighted for myself was Ice Cream Trucks and Outbreaks, thematic neighborhoods, where, okay, we've got new neighborhoods to, new pads of paper to do our flip and write on, but I don't know what an ice cream truck means, but I love ice cream. I can imagine what an outbreak means. Is it a viral outbreak, a zombie outbreak? I'm not quite sure. But there are a bunch of them, and they all sound very cool and charming and fun. Charming has become my new go-to word. Then there's Clank Expeditions, Temple of the Ape Lords. I have to admit, after doing the marathon Clank Legacy, finished the whole thing in less than a week that Jen and I did recently, I'm kind of a little burned out on Clank, but I can't deny the fact that more Clank is a good thing, and considering how cool the mummy board was, because it had that idea of an actual character that moves around and kind of hunts us, I think the same thing is true here, except now it's a big, giant King Kong ape chasing us, so I'm curious to see how that works in Temple of the Ape Lord. Then there's Imperial Settlers, Empires of the North, the Japanese Islands. I already talked about this earlier. Imperial Settlers Empires of the North is awesome. More stuff is even more awesome considering how crazy asymmetric the game is. Then there is Trickerion, Dahlgaard's Academy, and another expansion I don't remember the name of that's an expansion to Dahlgaard's Academy. Oh, I really need to get Trickerion to the board. I've been promising people to do it for a while, but now I feel like I should wait until I get Dahlgaard's Academy as well. Well, we'll see. But people love Trickerion. Underwater Cities, new discoveries. That is great. I mentioned earlier, Vladimir Succi is bringing out a cute little family-friendly kids game about adorable monsters. Nah, he's not done, folks. He's giving you more of what you want. He's giving you some more Underwater Cities as well. New discoveries. Don't care what they are. I'm sure they're going to be awesome because Underwater Cities was a top 10er. And finally, like I said, why didn't I go this fast the whole time? Teotihuacan, the late pre-classic period. Which, Teotihuacan was awesome. And I'm sure this will be more awesome. Prestigious fourth temple, unlocking permanent powerful abilities. Asymmetrical player powers, unique benefits. Modules are compatible with one another. More good stuff. And pretty much what you would expect. And that's it, folks. Like I promised, a very quick end to this. Am I good? No, I'm not going to do demos. If you want to hear about demos, this is my last plug for it. Go listen to me and Edward talk at great length about board games and Heavy Cardboard. The link for it will be in the show notes of this. And I am done. Although the work has only begun, folks. Now I got to edit all this together, and I got to edit my top 10 out of this for the video. Oh, so it's just starting. Wish me luck, And if anybody's going to be at Essen, I hope you have a great time. Sorry I won't be there to see you. Maybe next year. You never know. But that's it, folks. That is another episode of Rahdo Talks Through. And I'll be back next month. Jen will rejoin me. I'm sure we'll have a whole bunch of Q&A to catch up on. And probably still some more fallout from last month's Q&A. Ooh, we'll see what happens. But as always, thanks very much for listening. Have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye, bye, bye.